Hello, good morning, Democrats. Welcome to the San Francisco Democratic County Central Committee's endorsement process for endorsement interviews for ballot measures and bonds and propositions. We welcome you to this meeting, and we look forward to hearing both sides of the arguments for all of these ballot measures that we will be looking forward to voting on this November.
And that is co-chair Lily Ho of Issues
Sorry,
and
yes.
Resolution. And I'm co-chair Parag Gupta of Issues and Resolution as well. We welcome you. Just as a quick reminder as to how this will work, each proponent and opponent of a measure, if there is an opponent, will have a total of 7 minutes. And you'll see a 7-minute total amount of time on, I believe it will be Executive Director Bobak's screen. We also have Dawn, who will hold up a sign at when you have 30 seconds left and when you have time, or when you're at time, and that'll be for a 2-minute opening statement and then 5 minutes of Q&A. So that is how it'll work. 7 minutes total, 2 minutes opening, 5 minutes for Q&A. So with that, I believe we are ready to start. We do have Jenny Lamb, and I will turn it back to co-chair of Issues and Resolution, Member Ho, to kick us off.
Thank you. Our first topic will be Prop A, the Schools Improvement and Safety Bond. A yes vote means if you vote yes, you want the school district to issue up to $790 million in general obligation bonds to improve, repair, and upgrade school district sites and to build new facilities. A no vote means you do not want the school district to issue these bonds. And with that, we will open it up to Jenny Lamb, who is our guest who will be speaking on this, and our 7-minute clock will begin.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Jenny Lamb, SF School Board Member and co-chair of Prop A, the SFUSD bond. I have served on the school board since 2019, and I'm in my 16th and final year as an SFUSD parent. My son starts his senior year tomorrow. I'm here to talk about something that affects each and every one of us, the future of our public schools in San Francisco. I'm here because I believe that the strength of our city is directly tied to the strength of our public schools. And right now, our schools are at a crossroads. Many of our schools are in dire need of repairs and upgrades. We've made great progress in some areas thanks to past bond measures. The reality is that there is so much more that needs to be done. Our classroom, restrooms, and corridors need to be modernized, our schoolyards reimagined for outdoor learning, and our technology infrastructure brought up to the 21st century standards. And these improvements aren't just nice to have, they're essential. And they have a direct impact on students and their ability to learn in a safe and comfortable environment where every child can thrive. The $790 million bond we're proposing won't raise taxes for San Francisco residents. Instead, it will allow us to continue the work that we've been doing for years. Since 2003, SFUSD has successfully managed over $2 billion in bond funds, delivering projects on time and within budget. And this isn't a promise, it's a track record of success, and we're committed to upholding. This is why the bond measure is so essential. But beyond the numbers and infrastructure, this bond is about something much more fundamental. It's about equity and opportunity. SFUSD is the largest provider of food security for children in our city and serving about 4,000 meals every day. And we are very proud to have broad support of the SFUSD bond, including Mayor Breed, our labor partners, including United Educators, Building Trades Council, nearly unanimous support of the Board of Supervisors, and mayoral candidates Mark Farrell and Daniel Lurie. Supporting this bond isn't just about improving our schools, it's about investing in the future of San Francisco. A city is only as strong as public education system, and we want to continue being that beacon of innovation, inclusion, and progress. Thank you so much for the consideration, and let's keep moving forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Lamb. We appreciate you being here. I'll kick off on the first question, and then we'll open it up to any DCCC members or proxies that may have questions themselves. So, Commissioner Lamb, as you know better than most, there's a looming budget deficit with SFUSD of $421 million in the fiscal year 25-26. What measures or how do you track outcomes to make sure the bond is being spent well?
Well, we have built in an oversight that's required of our CBOC, which is an oversight body. We have to turn in reports on an annual basis, not only to the state, but reporting throughout consistently through the oversight bond committees and to the reporting to the Board of Education. We've had bonds since, as I mentioned, since 2003, and it's been 8 years now since our last bond in 2016. Of $744 million. There is no, at this point, continued dollars. We have already sold off the remaining of those obligation bonds, and this 2024 would continue to recommit and refund into the bond moving forward around the modernization.
Thank you. Any other questions from DCCC members? If you have any questions, just type stack into the chat as Executive Director Esfandiari has mentioned. I have one other, seeing none in the stack, Commissioner Lamb. You mentioned, and I've heard this before, that is it no new taxes or no new nothing new will be levied against San Franciscans. Is that correct? Did I hear that correct?
Correct. That would be not raising taxes to San Francisco residents, because already we've committed right now of the remaining of the 2016 bond. So it wouldn't be increasing, but again, recommitment and refunding of that. So San Francisco residents will not see an increase through their current base of taxes for the SFUSD bond measure.
Great, thank you. And I believe we have a question from Kurt Grimes.
There we are. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, Jenny. Thank you for being here. I have a question regarding this, and my concern is that, we're going through some serious climate change issues. I think it was 2 years ago, we had some serious heat waves happen here in San Francisco. Will these changes make our schools climate change adaptable?
Thank you for that question. Yes, because it is absolutely part of the modernization, and the majority of the $790 million, $410 million of it is included for modernization, which would also ensuring that HVAC systems are part of that modernization. The schoolyard outdoor learning, $10 million will be allocated to ensuring that there's student-centered improvements to schoolyards that are going to also improve outdoor learning, access to nature, and shade.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Any other questions? We have about 50 seconds left. I'll take co-chair prerogative and ask another, not seeing any others. Commissioner Lamb, my daughter is going in middle school, and if there's anything I hear her and her other friends say, it's that the school lunches are horrible. What would this bond do anything to help that matter?
Absolutely. That's also a core tenet to this bond, is that we are investing $225 million in student nutrition services, because we have been through many years of working with our vendors. We've gone through a lot of research and design about how important it is to establish a food hub for student nutrition services, because San Francisco Unified, as we saw, at the testament during COVID, that we are the largest provider, 40,000 meals per day that we provide. And we want to ensure that that is the highest quality of food that is going to be from scratch through this initial food hub.
Great. I'll turn it back to Co-Chair Ho.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and do we have the panelists for Prop B? Bobak, you're on mute.
Apologies. We have for Proposition B, Joseph Swice. I don't yet see him in the room.
And while you're doing that,
Oh, there he is.
Bobak, just as a note to anyone watching, as well as to our fellow DCCC members, we did not receive a request from the opponent or any opponents of Prop A to have time, and that's why we're moving on to Prop B.
That will be true for a couple of campaigns. So I don't know if you need to repeat it every time, but folks should be aware that we attempted to reach out to every campaign we could find contact information for and invite them to apply. And we also shared it out fairly broadly among the DCCC members and others to try and source as many applicants as possible. So the people who are coming today are the people we could get to come. With that, you have the proponent of Proposition B here with us in the panelist box, Mr. Joseph Swice.
Thank you, Mr. Swice. Thanks for being here with us. Prop B, the community health and medical facilities, street safety, public spaces, and shelter to reduce homelessness bond. A yes vote means if you want the city to issue up to $390 million in general obligation bonds to fund projects related to community health and medical facilities, street safety, public spaces, and interim housing to reduce family homelessness. If you vote no, you do not want the city to issue these bonds. And with that, Joseph, Mr. Swice, we'd like to start our 7-minute clock. You have 2 minutes to provide an introduction and 5 minutes for Q&A.
Great, thank you. Good morning, committee members. My name is Joseph Swice, running the campaign for Prop B. Like committee member Lily Ho said, this is a $390 million general obligation bond. Basically, voters will decide this November if they want to make a major investment in our public health infrastructure. So 200 million of that 390 million is going to be committed to all things much needed upgrades at our public health infrastructure. Our two largest institutions, that's SF General Hospital and Laguna Honda. These are for seismic operational improvements and much needed upgrades. There's also a component about which will go into culturally competent and community focused public health services. This includes the Chinatown Public Health Center, which has never been renovated since its inception, as well as a relocation of the city clinic, which focuses on STI treatment and prevention, primarily for LGBTQ communities in this city. So this is a much needed public infrastructure bond. But there's 3 other components to this bond I want to talk about. That includes about 60 million in street redesign. The city is going to look at its high injury, high traffic network across the city and redesign and construct those intersections safer. This includes investments in our homeless families to increase shelter capacity in existing spaces for groups that have minors and folks on. And lastly, there's a public improvements component to this that will upgrade, make ADA accessible, and make more vibrant our public spaces across the city. Notable examples include the Harvey Milk Plaza in the Castro and the Powell Street Station cable turnaround, which will be good for the economy, tourists, visitors, and that. And I think I'm at time and happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you, Joseph, for coming. So I'll kick off the first question. The city just passed a $15.9 billion budget. Why wouldn't maintenance of public facilities such as 64 million in sidewalk improvement or 40 million in public space improvement, as listed in the bond, just be covered in the standard municipal budget?
Think of this as a whole arsenal of tools at the city's disposal to get a lot of the work and upgrades done. Bonds are nothing extraordinary or ordinary. Municipalities use bonds as a measure to enact major capital improvement programs, and we actually schedule that out over 20 years. So what the Board of Supervisors, the mayor, the controller's office, and our capital planning office do is they look at all of the city's assets and projections of both our budget and debt management through bonds about how to get a lot of important work done. So this has always been a component of municipal and fiscal planning. And if you look at San Francisco's debt management and bond management practices for the last 10 or so years, we are a really proud city in getting the work done. And lastly, when you look at this fiscal planning process, we have in this city a lot of accountability measures from this that are bipartisan. So there's independent annual reviews and audits that not only go to the mayor's office and the Board of Supervisor's office, but we have a Citizens General Bond Oversight Committee. And not only does it, have all these requirements of accountability and transparency, this committee actually has teeth and can actually withhold funds of bonds if they see malpractice or delays or just have any issues. And that's a public and transparent process. So as a city, we should be really proud of that and not that with maybe other components of the city's fiscal planning process, because this is a much needed capital improvement program that has really been in the works for years now.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you.
Thank you. My next question is how would you measure or track outcomes to make sure that the bond is being spent well?
Again, we have the Citizens General General Obligation Oversight Committee does this for us. That's one component that, like I said, actually has an enforcement mechanism to it. And if you look at previous bonds, San Francisco managed those really well. And secondly, this bonds are managed on like a multi-agency platform. So the Board of Supervisors have their own parameters and requirements that the bond components are required to meet, as well as the mayor's office, the city controller's office, and a lot of other agencies. So we should be proud of that as a city, and remember that these are not just feel-good components, but things that our public health infrastructure on.
Thank you.
Great. I believe we have a question from Member Coles.
Yeah, good morning. To the voters who are concerned about property taxes increasing as a result of this bond, what would you say?
Thank you so much for asking that. So this does not increase your property taxes, and that's a long-standing city policy from 2006. So your property taxes don't change because as old bonds expire, new bonds like this would pass and we'd keep the threshold the same. So why these amounts get chosen and how these get scheduled out, it's all part of a plan to make sure that your taxes are not raised. And this has been a longstanding city policy with a lot of the bonds we voted on recently. Was there another question?
I do not see any other questions.
I would just quickly close, if it's okay with this committee members. This is a really important bond. There's a lot in November. I'm really proud of all the endorsements coming out of this committee. And we're asking that we also save some space to help get this bond passed with the 60 threshold. It's actually very hard. And this is a critical and really important bond for our city. Thank you all so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Spice.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for joining us. And again, we did not have an opponent for this bond who wished to participate.
All right. Up next on your roster, you have Proposition C, Inspector General. The proponent side goes first. The person I have listed as the speaker for that, unless they did not reply to my text outreach about it. So is Ajay Nicole Duncan. I am Looking for, oh, I see Ed Harrington has his hand raised. I believe Ed might be that person. I couldn't confirm the speaker properly, so I'm gonna promote Mr. Harrington, who I think I know is associated with that campaign, and we can confirm.
Hi, good morning. Sorry for the name mix-up.
No worries. You're the speaker for Proposition C? Okay, perfect. Got it.
C, D, and E. So yeah, keep me going.
Okay, got it. You're the proponent for C. You're the one that is the speaker for all the ones that is associated with Ajay, Nicole, Duncan.
Right. Sorry.
Got it. No worries. All right, good. Then I'm gonna keep you coming back and forth for a bit. Anyway, go ahead, members.
Terrific. This is Prop C, Inspector General. If you vote yes, you want to create the new position of Inspector General in the Controller's Office to review and investigate complaints of fraud, waste, and abuse, and grant the Controller's Office the power to issue subpoenas and execute search warrants when permitted by state law. If you vote no, you do not wish to make these changes. Mr. Harrington, you have 7 minutes in total, 2 minutes for your opening, and we'll start the timer now.
Great. Thanks so much. And good morning. My name is Ed Harrington. I was the controller for San Francisco for 17 years and then general manager of the SF Public Utilities Commission. And I've also served on the Public Utilities and Port Commission over the years. And I'm here to ask for your support for Proposition C, which would create an Inspector General or IG office in San Francisco. You know, I personally believe that most of the people who work for the city are honest people, but when you have 34,000 people and you have all the contractors that we have, even if half of 1% are dishonest, that's still a lot of people you have to control. And if we want to convince people to pay their taxes or even raise taxes to provide services to people in the city, they have to be clear that their taxes are well spent without fraud or deceit. So the city has existing processes to root out this kind of behavior, but clearly that hasn't been enough. If you look at the things that we're reading about in the newspaper, it typically is the US attorney or the FBI that's been catching some of the wrongdoing in San Francisco. So we need to do better. The controls we have under the district attorney, the ethics commission, the city attorney, and the controller are mostly reactive. If you call with a whistleblower complaint, they will investigate it, but they don't proactively seek out potential problems. One way of looking at it is that you might say we do a good job once we see a fire. We don't do a good job smelling smoke and acting on that. So this is what Prop G is designed to do. We said, let's look around the country. What do other people do? And we saw that other cities are starting to have Inspector General kind of offices. They have them in New York, Chicago, Philadelphia. They have them in Los Angeles, Miami-Dade counties. And they have independent authority to root out problems and combat them. So this Prop C would create an IG office in the Controller's Department, the most independent department in San Francisco. By doing it, we avoid setting up a whole new bureaucracy. Also, the controller has to set aside in the budget, so the funds that are allocated to it are not always spent every year. This would be able to go into that fund without asking for a new budget request. If the IG staff needs to do an investigation, they can draw on the additional personnel in the controller's office, so they don't have to surge. They can surge with existing staff, not hire all kinds of new staff. The IG gets citywide buy-in because it has to be approved by the mayor and by the board of supervisors. It does add subpoena power to this office so that you can look at not just city employees, but anybody who does work with the city. It sets up to work with other city agencies collectively, and it brings sunshine to these kind of things by requiring biannual reports. I urge you to support Prop C. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Harrington. I will kick us off with the first question, which is, if the intent is to create an independent authority to investigate fraud, waste, and abuse, why have the position subject to approval by the mayor and board of supervisors and potentially be removed by the controller?
Well, you have to figure out how you get independence. One way to do it is have an elected official. I personally don't believe the city needs more elected officials. And I think that elected officials aren't necessarily politically independent because they have to run for office and they have to be endorsed by people. So what do you do next to get some kind of independence? You put it in a place like the controller that's independent, but you also have to have people have faith that it's not just the controller doing it. So by having a collective buy-in of the leadership of San Francisco, the controller, the mayor, and the board, you end up with that kind of collective ownership and independence at the same time.
Great, thank you. Mr. Grimes, I believe you're next.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Harrington. My question is, I'm kind of curious as to how the inspector in this board find out things. Or would someone just file a complaint? I mean, there's been a lot of as you mentioned, there's been a lot of things in the paper recently about some agencies and some grantees not handling money correctly, I guess. But how would they find out about this? What would be the notification mechanism?
So I guess that's the difference, is that if somebody notifies the city attorney or the controller right now, we go out and do investigations. But there are always rumors. There's always the sense of, that place isn't running very well. And by having somebody that says, I'm going to take an hour or a day and check that out. I mean, when Mohammed Nuro was hired, there was a general consensus that the man was not honest, but nobody did anything because nobody officially complained. This office would actually try to dig things up and see, are things clean in this place? Are they working appropriately? Or is there no there there in terms of these rumors and complaints? But it would go in at a much earlier stage in this than waiting for an official complaint to come in. That's the goal of it anyway.
All right, Michaela, I believe you have the next question.
Hi, Ed. Nice to see you. Clearly, it speaks volumes that you are in favor of this. I respect your opinion greatly. I am kind of curious, would you mind talking a little bit about the subpoena power and how that would work? Because that is obviously a very powerful tool to be giving out. Well, you understand what I'm asking.
Sure. And you're right. I mean, so we do have subpoena power already. So I can, as controller, you can look at employee records, you can look at employee bank accounts even. But when we go out to audit contractors, people doing business with the city, we don't have the authority to look at their kind of records. So if we go out and look at a nonprofit, we can ask them for information. If they don't provide it, we're kind of stuck there. So this would add that ability to be able to say, we need your bank records, we need your payroll records, we need things to support the fact that you are charging the city for these kind of services. We even need internal records for, did your employees come to work today if you were in charge, if you were actually billing us for their work that day. So it's that additional outside of the city subpoena authority that this is giving.
So would the subpoena power be run through the controller's office specifically,
Yes.
or the inspector general?
Well, it would be the
Okay.
IG, which is part of the controller's office.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from members? Okay. Seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Harrington, for your time. And sounds like we'll be seeing you again shortly.
Yes. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Up next, we have Prop D, City Commissions and Mayoral Authority. The proponent, we have both a proponent and opponent for this measure. Babak, is Kanishka Chang in the room?
Promoting her now. All right, you have the proponent of Proposition D with you in the panelist box, Kanishka Chang. I'm going to go ahead and, well, I'll start the timer when she starts talking, but go ahead and do your intro.
All right. Welcome, Ms. Chang. We are at Prop D, City Commissions and Mayoral Authority. A yes vote means you want to limit the total number of commissions the city may have to 65, give the mayor sole authority to appoint and remove city department heads, and give the police chief sole authority to adopt rules governing police officers' conduct. If you vote no, you do not want to make these changes. And with that, Ms. Chang, we have 7 minutes total, and the clock will start now.
Good morning, members. Thanks for having me on today. So Proposition D, our main premise is that San Francisco has too many commissions. There are 130 commissions in San Francisco when larger cities like LA and San Diego have fewer than 50. Even when looking at combined city counties, they have fewer commissions than San Francisco does, despite many of them having much larger populations and, of course, greater land mass. This has led to a bloated commission system, which causes unnecessary bureaucracy. The civil grand jury report that recently came out estimated that city staff spends about 10% of their time just servicing commissions. We believe this time is better spent directly serving residents, delivering policy and programming outcomes, the things that really matter for our residents. So many commissions also create confusion in government. It's not clear who's actually in charge of decisions for departments. I think San Francisco residents, our voters, are pretty fed up with hearing elected officials say, this is the responsibility of that commission or that commission and not mine. The goal of our measure is to restore accountability and authority to the people that we as voters elect to make these decisions and provide oversight over this work. The current system makes it hard to remove commissioners for corruption, for bad behavior. We have many examples of former commissioners engaging in bad, unethical, illegal behaviors. And you can't remove them without a formal misconduct process, which is a very, very high threshold and has not been used in the last 20 years, I believe. Commissions are intended to provide oversight, but they're not really great at doing that either. We've, as I mentioned, seen examples of corrupt contracting, poor financial management, despite having commissions overseeing these departments and their contracting work. Prop D fixes these problems by incorporating many of the recommendations from the Rose Institute report that we commissioned 2 years ago that have been further validated recently by the Civil Grand Jury report and Spur's report on commissions and governance. Prop D, what it does is creates a temporary task force to evaluate and streamline the commission system through a public process that will take about 1.5 years. It establishes a 65 hard cap, which is based off of intense research from the independent think tank, the Rose Institute, to assure that our measure will actually reduce bureaucracy and deliver results. It gives appointing authorities, i.e. the mayor and the board of supervisors, the ability to directly remove their appointed commissioners so that they can hold commissioners accountable for corrupt or bad behavior. It establishes a regular reevaluation of the commission system every 10 years to ensure that commissions continue to deliver values for residents. And it creates clearer accountability in government by ensuring that the mayor can directly hire and fire department heads. It makes it clear that the mayor and not commissions are responsible for city department performance. And it restores oversight to the board of supervisors. Allows voters to hold elected officials accountable. So with that, I will urge you to support Prop D and deliver real reforms.
Awesome. Thank you. I believe we have quite a few questions, so I'm just going to jump right into it. Member Alioto-Pierre, would you like to ask the first question?
Oh, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Member Gupta. Hi, Kanishka. Nice to see you. This obviously is just the beginning of conversations that I think the two of us are going to have. But one of the things that does jump out at me that I am curious about is the 65 commission hard cap and exactly how you came to that number. San Francisco has, and let me preface this by saying that I do agree with you, 130 commissions is an awful lot of commissions in a city. We do need to have some streamlining. But the question really, too, goes to the fact that San Francisco has always been a very participatory city. People like to play a role. And so commissions have a lot of different, import. How did we get to 65 and what commissions would we lose as a result of that? And would it have made more sense to do the task force first and then come up with the commissions that we think need to go by the wayside and then come up with a number?
Sure. So we totally agree that San Francisco has a robust public input, public engagement culture, and that's why we have such a sprawling commission system. I think 65 is still a very robust number of commissions for the public to engage with, as well as the board of supervisors committees, where even more intense work and public comment engagement happens. We came up with the number 65 with the Rose Institute. They actually evaluated all of the current commissions, looked at which ones are still meeting, which ones are not, which ones should have been sunset, which ones aren't holding quorum, which ones are delivering real oversight, accountability, adjudicatory powers. And they actually came up with a list of 62. And so we just rounded that up to 65 to create, space for things we might not have thought about. The ones that we retained in the charter that would not be eligible for this consolidation process through the task force are the ones that oversee enterprise departments or major city departments. So MTA, PUC, Port. They perform critical ethical, good government, fiscal oversight functions, so ethics, elections. And then we looked at which ones are adjudicatory, so planning, board of appeals, which ones provide disciplinary actions, fire, police. And so that's the bucket of 22 that are going to remain in the charter. and the rest are up for conversation. And really our goal is that this creates a much needed public conversation around what the remaining commissions should do, which ones should exist. You know, when we have 130 plus priorities, nothing is really a priority. And we want to have a public conversation, encourage the city to think about what should our main priorities be and what should those commissions look like to oversee those priorities. And to your second question about why not do the task force first and then come back with a ballot measure. So that's a 4-year process then to go through 2 election cycles. And we just felt such a sense of urgency that the city is in need of a real reform in the governance structure right now. It is the entire goal of our organization to think about the structural issues that can enable the city to be more efficiently governed and deliver more impactful services for the residents. And we felt a real urgency to do it now when the time felt very ripe, as voters are very engaged in this conversation over the last couple of years.
Thank you.
I recognize we only have about 20 seconds left. I don't know if we have enough time then to get to our next question. But Member Coles, I hope you will reach out to Ms. Chang to ask that question.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Out of
Ms.
time?
Chang,
Okay.
we'll see you soon. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Ms. Chang. And now we will go to the opponent of Prop D.
Yes, so we're bringing back
Okay,
Mr.
yeah.
Harrington, who this is going to happen for the next couple presentations because the proponents of Yes on D are also the opponents of E and vice versa. So Mr. Harrington is here to make his case for, I need to actually stop that timer, but he's here to make his case for no on D.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Harrington. We've got a 2-minute intro, 5-minute Q&A, 7 minutes total. The time will start now. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And obviously, yes, I'm here speaking against Proposition D. First, let's be clear, this is not some simple housekeeping exercise. Prop D would mandate the largest transfer of authority and power from the people of San Francisco to the staff in City Hall since the 1932 charter was adopted. Yes, the city has 130 commissions and advisory committees. 44 of them have been put into the charter by the voters over the last 100 years. The rest of the commissions were created by ordinance, most of them by the mayor and the board. And Prop D would make 3 big changes to the government. First, Prop D creates a task force whose first job is to find and abolish 65 of the 130 commissions, thereby cutting in half the opportunities for public engagement in San Francisco. Second, it takes 24 commissions out of the city charter. These have been added over the last 100 years, as I've said, by voters who wanted to protect these commissions and give them the power to make decisions. They set policy, they approve budgets, they award contracts. And the commissions that were left in and taken out of the charter seem quite arbitrary. For example, Prop D leaves in the Rec Park Commission, but it takes out the Library Commission. Both were in the 1932 charter, both serve many San Franciscans. Why different treatment? Prop D takes out the Health Commission. The Health Commission oversees the largest city department with a budget larger than the size of the city of Oakland. It awards over $1 billion annually in contracts. Why would you take out public oversight of that? In each case, these changes would remove decision-making authority from a citizen commission and give it to an appointed department head. And once taken out, they cannot get back that authority. Third, while every city in the country is trying to figure out how to provide public oversight of the police department, this proposal says, and I quote, "The police commission may not adopt rules, regulations, or policies that impose any requirement or prohibition on the conduct of police department employees." So no public employment, no public involvement at all on use of force policies, use of body cameras, anything. These issues will be now decided by the police chief and the police union. You've heard about 3 different proposals and reports that have come out this year. This is not based on those reports. No one recommended killing 65 commissions. No one recommended taking 24 commissions from the city charter. And no one even discussed removing oversight from the police department. I ask you to vote no on this.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. I will now open it up to questions from our DCCC members. Any questions from?
Okay, we have a question from member Michaela Leota-Peart. 45 seconds out.
Thank you, Member Ho. Ed, can you speak a little bit? About and this could have been a question for Kanishka too, but we ran out of time on that one. The commissions, my understanding is that a number of the commissions that currently are appointed completely by the board, some of the enterprise agencies, like I believe the airport, those commissions will be split, so that not split equally, but they will give some appointments to the Board of Supervisors where they currently don't have them. Can you speak a little bit to that? I'm just sort of curious about how that would work. Am I being clear with my question?
You are, but I think you have it backwards. They're currently all appointed by the mayor, and this would
Right.
give the mayor at least 2/3 in all commissions. So places like the PUC and the airport that used to be 5 appointed by the mayor, with approval by the Board of Supervisors, would now have 4 by the mayor and 1 by the board.
Right. I'm sorry. That is exactly what I was trying to say. Can you speak a little bit to that? Do you know how many of the commissions would be affected by that, and which ones they would be?
I don't. Sorry,
Okay.
it's not my proposal.
No.
I don't.
No worries. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions from members?
I have a question for Mr.
Yes.
Harrington.
Sure.
When we think about the balance of power in municipal government, in San Francisco in particular, we have seen instances where the mayor does not have authority. In particular, I'm thinking about school reopening and the Board of Education the Board of Education. And that's an instance where the mayor did not have the authority to reopen the schools. So are there other instances, or do you agree that in that instant, perhaps the mayor should have more power?
So the city charter and everything else we've ever worked with separates the school district and community college district from the city. These amendments do nothing to change that. So the mayor has no authority over the school district and would continue to have no authority over with Prop D or E. The mayoral authority parts that are in here, there's 3 changes. One is it says the mayor can hire and fire department heads, which theoretically may be important, but practically speaking, in my 40 years in government, the mayor has always been able to hire or fire any department head the mayor wanted to hire and fire. So we can clean that up maybe, but it already really exists. It says the mayor should be able to appoint all the commissioners that she has and not have to have it subjected to the Board of Supervisors. Again, that may be important, but my recollection is that in the last 2 or 3 years, the board may have turned down 2, maybe 3 of the mayor's appointments. Not enough to destabilize government by any chance at all. And the other part about the mayor being able to fire her commissioners. Well, we have 130 commissions. She can fire 115 of them already. It's only the last 15 that were put in with the ethics reform that says you have to have cause to fire those. And really, let's face it, this mostly comes down to the mayor appointed somebody to the police commission that they didn't vet for loyalty, and she doesn't agree with that police commissioner. That is not the reason to destabilize government in San Francisco to get 1 police commissioner, which is kind of the intent of this.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Are there any other questions from members? Okay, well, we will, Mr. Harrington, I believe you are on next as well, so maybe we just keep you on rather than kick you off and then bring you back in, and we just tee up ballot measure E.
All right, thank you. Ballot measure E, creating a task force to recommend changing, eliminating, or combining city commissions. A yes vote means you want to create a task force with authority to make recommendations by February 1st, 2026 on ways the city could change, eliminate, or consolidate commissions to improve the administration of city government. Require a financial report on the city's commissions and give the task force authority to introduce ordinances to implement its recommendations, and if necessary, require the city attorney to draft charter amendments to submit to voters at a future election. A no vote means you do not want to make these changes. And with that, Mr. Harrington, you have 7 minutes, a 2-minute introduction, 5-minute Q&A for this. Thank you.
Again, thanks for your time this morning. So city commissions provide a vital link between the people of San Francisco and their government. The civil grand jury did a deep dive into commissions this year and noted that commissions provide for citizen engagement, foster transparency, promote accountability, provide oversight, and contribute expertise. But during this year, there's also been 3 reports that have said we have too many of these bodies. Some are simply inactive. The grand jury noted 20 of these commissions haven't met in the last few years. They've exceeded their sunset dates, but they're still listed. Some others appear to be redundant. Nowhere near 65, nowhere near half of them, but a good number of them. Prop E is intended to bring all of these closed-door discussions into a public setting. Prop E closely follows the recommendations of the recent SPUR report on improving city government called Design to Share. It sets up a short-term streamlining task force of 5 members appointed by the mayor, board, president, city administrator, city attorney, and controller. It's required to review and evaluate which commissions need to be eliminated, changed, or combined. We were afraid that this would end up being one more report on the shelf. So the process uses what's called the military base closure process. If you recall, in Congress, it was impossible to ever close a military base because that state senators or House members would stop it. So then they changed it and said, we're going to bring 20 or 30 at a time, and you voted up or down. We did a similar thing here. So this task force can bring ordinances back to the Board of Supervisors, and they go into effect within 90 days unless the board by a 2/3 vote vetoes those. So it gives this a streamlining ability to go in and actually make these changes without nickel and diming things. Prop E does not have any preconditions to the number of commissions to a certain number. It does not drop commissions from the city charter. It does not gut the police commission. I ask you recommend to vote yes on E.
Great. Thank you again, Mr. Harrington. So I see we have questions already. I'll go to our first question from Member Mahmood.
Thank you, Ed, for being here and for presenting this proposal. So just to recap, I'm understanding that this proposition will set up another commission to decide on commissions, but I think in government, accountability, metrics, and objectives are really important. So how does this proposition ensure that anything changes as a result to get the outcomes that it wants?
So to be clear, Prop D and Prop E both set up short-term task forces to do this work. They're not setting up commissions for all time. The point here is that this commission, this streamlining task force, once it's set up, is able to just make these changes and have them go through the Board of Supervisors without preconditions. I do understand Prop D has a bit more force because it says the world blows up unless you do something. And these things just go away without anything. That, to my mind, is a bridge too far for me. I think the public elected officials should be able to do something to make movement and not just have this foisted on them because of this overreach of Prop D.
Maybe to be more clear, what specific outcomes do you expect 1, 2, and 4 years from the setup of the passage of Proposition E? What outcomes do you expect?
Okay, so Prop E has a task force that goes through the beginning of 2026, 14 months. And at that time, they're supposed to produce all these different ordinance changes and have that change happen. Should there be a change to a charter commission, and let me be clear, in the grand jury report, they looked at all the charter commissions and they said they should be kept. Not 24 of them should be dropped. If there by some chance is something that needs the charter change, that goes on to the November 26 ballot. Everything else is done by the spring of 26, which is really the same timing as Prop E and as Prop D. What forces this? I do understand your point that there's nothing that absolutely makes this for sure happen except the fact that all of us are engaged in this and we're setting up a commission and we're giving that streamlining commission power. But you're right. There's no outside force that says the city has to actually act. I get that.
Thank you.
Right. Moving on to our next question from Member 2.
Hi, Ed. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi.
So my question is, why is this task force given legislative powers? Isn't this basically putting more power into the hands of unelected officials? And isn't this just another example of commission taking away power from elected officials?
And that's really the balance. And actually, from the last question to this question, how do you make it strong enough to have something happen and not so strong that it takes away power? So we thought we found a middle ground for that. This gives them the power to introduce an ordinance. It gives the power that if the board does not act, the ordinance takes effect, but it leaves the final power with the board. If 2/3 of them want to disapprove it, they can do that. It's very similar for things like rates for water and waste and sewer in San Francisco. Public Utilities Commission has the authority to actually change the rates unless the board overrides them. The mayor has the authority to appoint most commissioners unless the board overrides it. So it's a very similar kind of transaction to the other ones that currently exist in the city.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions from members?
If you have time, could I make another point?
Sure.
This whole thing about the Rose Institute and this independent Rose Institute, the Rose Institute is a couple of college professors in a small college in Southern California and their students. They apparently sat in a room somewhere for a few weeks and said, this is how San Francisco should be organized. Weigh that against all the people in the last 100 years that have put charter changes on the ballot. They've gone to the board, they've collected signatures, they've created campaigns, they've raised money, they've come to groups like this to get your endorsement, and they've gotten collectively hundreds of thousands of votes. That means less than some college students that sat in a room and said you should get rid of 24 commissions. That's crazy to me. But anyway.
Great. Okay. I don't think we have any other questions. Member Kalamucci, you have the last 40 seconds. If you can ask a quick question.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks. Can you just quickly comment on what is the outcome if both Prop D and Prop E pass?
So the wording is poison pill, I realize, but the idea is that when you have two overlapping and competing charter amendments, if one gets more votes, things that are in direct competition, the one that gets more votes wins. This is one where there's some things like Prop D has gutting the police commission. Prop E doesn't mention the police commission. If you don't have the kind of wording we added in Prop E, then that police commission portion of Prop D might go forward even though Prop E got more votes. And the whole point of Prop E is to not have things like that happen. That's why that poison pill, so to speak, language is in there.
Great.
Thank you,
Well
Mr.
done, Member Kalamucci and Mr. Harrington. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and now we have up next the opponent to Prop D, E. And we'll welcome back Ms. Kanishka Cheng.
Yes, and you're going to do this one or two more times with a few other props that have proponent and opponents for them.
We love a lively debate. Thank you. Welcome back, Ms. Cheng. Again, we've got 7 minutes, 2-minute intro, 5-minute Q&A.
Great. Thanks so much for having me back to talk about why we're encouraging you to vote no on Prop E. Prop E was crafted by Supervisor Peskin purely as a poison pill to kill together SF Action's Prop D by misleading and confusing voters. This is the exact playbook that he ran in November 2022 by creating a very misleading Prop E to confuse voters and kill the pro-housing measure Prop D. I'm asking you all to think about this strategy and how it affects our ability to be successful in policy and ballot measures going forward, and ask you not to reward this kind of bad behavior. Supervisor Peskin has spent decades in San Francisco politics, and yet he is only now trying to fix the commission system problem. Again, this is not a good faith effort by him. He's had plenty of years to work on this problem. He voted for, helped create many of the ridiculous commissions we have today. And we think what Prop E is going to do is create an unaccountable, unelected body that has all the power to create even more commissions. This is a very dangerous feature in Prop E, and it will lead to unintended consequences. This task force, which a number of them are required to be city employees, is dangerous and it's undemocratic. It's an unelected body that will have lawmaking powers. This is a wild overreach in power granted to unelected bureaucrats. It's interesting that the opponent for Prop D said that it would empower bureaucrats, but it actually restores authority to voters and elected officials, unlike Prop E, which does the exact opposite. There is no guarantee that Prop E would result in an actual reduction in the number of commissions. The task force could choose to keep them all. The task force could add more commissions unilaterally, so we could have even more than we have now. This measure was created by a supervisor who has a record of dishonest behavior around this topic, and this is a disingenuous ballot measure. We encourage you to vote no on it.
Thank you, Ms. Chang. Any questions for Ms. Chang? Has it been well trodden over the last?
Well, if I have a minute, I will say the Rose Institute, in defense of the Rose Institute, which is a well-respected, established academic institute out of Claremont McKenna College, is run by professors who have decades of experience working in big city governments. I hate to disparage college students who are the future of our country and are spending their time doing the academic research. And our report actually did interview close to 30 current and former elected and senior officials in San Francisco government to get their perspective. And that's really what drove the recommendations.
Thank you, Ms. Chang. Any last call for any questions that folks have on this matter? Okay. Thank you again, Ms. Chang, for coming and representing. And yeah, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, we will be moving on to Prop F. Is Supervisor Matt Dorsey on?
You are slightly ahead of schedule, so but we shall see. Yes, he is. Let's move right along. Let's be mindful of the fact that if we continue to go ahead of schedule, we might start to not have our proponents and opponents here early enough. But
how much ahead of schedule are we, Bobak?
4 minutes, 3 minutes.
Okay, all right. We've generally asked folks to come 10 or 15 minutes ahead, so
it'll just stack up is what I'm saying. Anyway, let me stop the clock for that prior presentation. All right, there you go. And you are ready to proceed with Proposition F.
Okay, welcome Supervisor Matt Dorsey.
Thanks.
Morning. Now, we are on Prop F, police staffing and deferred retirement. A yes vote means you want to amend the charter to define, quote, full duty sworn officer, end quote, require the police chief to make a report and recommend future staffing of full duty sworn officers to the police commission every 3 years instead of 2, require the commission to report annually to the board on department staffing, and create a 5-year program with possible renewals allowing police officers to continue working for the department after retiring, with pension payments deferred while they are working. A no vote means you do not want to make these changes. Welcome, Supervisor Matt Dorsey. We have 7 minutes to altogether, 2 minutes intro and 5 minutes Q&A, and your time will start now.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, for having me, inviting me on to talk about Proposition F. For those of you who you know me, you know that for the last year and a half, I have been working on the issue of police staffing. And one of the things that I would say is we are in a once-in-a-generation crisis in police understaffing in San Francisco. Right now, we are more than 500 officers below the recommended minimum staffing level. What is more concerning, or at least as concerning, is that there's another close to 450 officers who will be coming up for retirement in the next 5 years. So my first attempt back end of last year, earlier this year, kind of ended up in a fight over what was called Prop B that I was against. When I went back to the drawing board, what I really tried to do was to approach my colleagues with the spirit of consensus, and I think we're good at getting as close to consensus as one can get on police staffing. I have 7 members of the Board of Supervisors who are co-sponsors with me, so there's 8 of us on this. Mayor Breed is in support, Chief Scott, former Chief Greg Sir. 2 of the mayoral candidates are Aaron Peskin is co-authored, and Asha is also on a co-sponsor, and I believe most of the other 2 mayor candidates, I believe, are at least conceptually on board. What this will do is increase oversight and accountability for reporting for the police department to the Board of Supervisors as we dig out of this. But the reason it has to go to voters is because anytime you touch the retirement system, voters have to approve it. This is what's called a deferred retirement option plan, that would give officers an option to take basically to have their retirement go into an interest-bearing account, provided they work in a role as doing neighborhood patrol and investigations. So it's focused on public safety and delivering real value in public safety, and it's time limited. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Supervisor Dorsey. Any questions? Well, let me start off with the first. Supervisor Dorsey, what is the target staffing level this ballot measure seeks to achieve, and by when?
Okay. So ultimately, my hope, and I know the mayor has articulated this, we need to get to a fully staffed police department, which is 2,074 full-duty police officers. One thing this charter amendment will do is define what full duty means. What it means is officers who are not on leave, and it doesn't count officers at the airport or anybody in the police academy that's stands to reason because those officers aren't sworn, they're sort of new hires. So it would standardize that. Ultimately, within the next few years, we're hoping to get to 2,074 police officers. That is an independently recommended methodology and based on workload and crime data for how many police officers we should have. It gets adjusted every few years. One thing that I heard from Chief Scott and Chief Sir and everybody was we need to focus on recruiting new officers, but that can't be all we do. We also have to staunch the bleeding on retirements because right now there is a disproportionately large generational cohort of officers who are around my age or maybe a little younger, who are reaching retirement age. And if we can incentivize them to work another 5 years, that will enable us to catch our breath and actually build out the police department. So it's a temporary solution, but one of the elegant sort of solutions for an aggressive retention strategy like this is we don't have to miss a beat in terms of waiting a year for an officer to go through the police academy and the field training program. These are officers who are experienced, they know what they're doing, and we require that participation in the deferred retirement mean that the participating officers have to work on patrol in the neighborhood district stations, or they have to work in investigations doing frontline police work.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor Dorsey. Chair Tung.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's afternoon where I am, but I just wanted to ask a question. Supervisor Dorsey, how many officers do you expect to participate in the DROP program based on previous iterations of DROP?
So there is a range that the budget and legislative analyst thinks that it's going to be up to 50 officers per year. The controller and the actuary think it will be at the higher end, that most of the officers would participate in it. I do know that based on, we have anecdotal information that in a normal year, there's about 47 or 50 retirements. Right now, since we've been talking about this, the retirements are on pause. We've only got about 30 announced. So we think there are officers waiting, and basically that's a good sign. That means that this is something that will work. The way that this is structured too is, if the amount of money that we would be spending on this from the retirement system, if we're not spending much money on it, that means it's really not working, but it's not hurting anything because we're not spending money on it. The maximum that this would be is about $3 million per year, according to the actuary and the controller. That is actually one of the least expensive and most cost-effective ballot measures on the ballot this year. And among the three retirement measures, this is the least expensive. It's also time limited.
So, and would you say that having officers extend their term with the police department is less expensive than having those hours filled with overtime?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things, I'm glad you brought this up. One of the things that's very frustrating for me is, listen, I support budget supplementals on the Board of Supervisors to fund overtime, but I'm not proud of it. That we're spending more money for less policing, and we should be running a city better than that. In good conscience, we should be doing everything we can to minimize overtime. And by the way, as a former employee in the city attorney's office, you never want to take an emergency responder and run them ragged. There's a lot of risks to their well-being and health and safety. So that's something that I'm hearing loud and clear from police officers and others. We need to minimize overtime, not just for the the money, but also for the officer well-being.
Thank you, Supervisor Dorsey.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Great.
And we do not have an opponent for this, so we will move forward with the next proposition.
Okay. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Supervisor. And we are now on to ballot measure G, funding rental subsidies for affordable housing developments serving low-income seniors, families, and persons with disabilities.
Correct. You have Meg Heisler attending to present on this measure. and I have just promoted Meg up into the attendees, not the attendee, the panelist box. Go ahead when you are ready.
Terrific. Welcome, Ms. Heisler.
Hi, everyone. My name is Meg Heisler. I'm very
Oh,
excited.
hold on one second. Let me introduce the prop just very quickly. A yes vote means you want to amend the charter to appropriate at least $8.25 million a year to pay for rental subsidies for affordable housing developments serving ELI households of seniors, families, and persons with disabilities. A no vote means you do not want the city to make these changes. And with that, Ms. Heisler, please go ahead.
Amazing. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Meg Heisler. I'm very excited to be here on behalf of Prop G, which is the Affordable Housing Opportunity Fund. Thank you so much for having me. I'll start by sharing that the measure is the result of years of collective thinking and advocacy by a broad coalition of over 30 organizations, including affordable housing and service organizations such as Mission Housing, the Housing Accelerator Fund, and Self-Help for the Elderly. It was put on the ballot by the board with co-sponsorship from all 11 supervisors and is supported by the mayor, who has signed on as an official proponent. So this is a true consensus measure. Prop G will create a first of its kind program to ensure seniors on fixed incomes, parents and families working minimum wage jobs, and people with disabilities are able to access our city's affordable housing. We're talking about households earning less than $35,000, $40,000 a year who are currently shut out of the system because their incomes are too low. This is a gap that existing federal and state programs are unable to address. It is also not an eligible use of bond revenues, so establishing a new local program is essential. Without it, we're excluding a large portion of San Franciscans from accessing the housing that we're working so hard to build. This measure is on the ballot because the funding must be guaranteed year over year in order to secure financing for the development of new affordable housing. It is responsive to needs analyses conducted by the city, by multiple city departments, and aligns with policy recommendations from All Home and the Turner Center, as well as policy recommendations in the housing element. We would greatly appreciate your support. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Meg. Thank you, Ms. Heisler. I'll start off with the first question. As an affordable housing leader, I'm obviously a fan of affordable housing. In the controller analysis of this, it states the proposed amendment is not in compliance with a non-binding voter-adopted city policy regarding set-asides. The policy seeks to limit set-asides, which reduce general fund dollars that could otherwise be allocated to the mayor and the board of supervisors in the annual budget process. So my question is, why offer ballot measure G instead of allocating it in the annual budget process?
Yeah, so I think I touched a little bit on this in my opening statement, but in order for a subsidy program like this to be most effective, we need to be able to tell lenders who are financing the development of these buildings that the subsidy will be available for at least 15 years, and in this case, 20 years. So they can feel some certainty that the money that will be there in order to repay the debt that the developers are taking out. So it could be that we dedicate a bit of money one budget year, a bit of money the next budget year, but that is not enough to reinforce to lenders that it's going to be available. They have to have certainty that that's the case.
Great, thank you. And as a reminder, if any of our members have questions, just feel free to put stack in the chat. I'll pause for a second before I ask my next question in case anyone has one.
Can you give an example of lenders having trouble with providing a loan without a guarantee from the city?
Yeah, so they have guarantees to the point where we can subsidize rents to 60% AMI, 50% AMI. But in order to get deeper than that, we need this additional subsidy because we can't fund those subsidies via bonds. Bonds can only be used for real property. So acquiring land, developing a building, or rehabbing a building. So certainly we could continue building affordable housing, and lenders won't have any trouble, as far as I know, to get to the 50-60% AMI, but for them to agree to rents lower than that, to 30% AMI and below, we would need to have this additional subsidy.
Thank you.
Great.
Rocky.
Sure. And Ms. Eisler, if you could speak to what does success look like in this? Is there sort of a target number of deals or amount of units built?
Yeah, so we are aiming to reach 600 units in the first year. And we have built a provision in so that if there is a projected budget deficit in the first year, the allocation in fiscal year 26-27 could drop down to 4 million, in which case the number of units would be lower. But if we are able to fully fund the program in the first year, we'll reach around 600 units. And I would also just like to add, if it's okay, we have designed the measure to be quite flexible. So it can receive certainly funds from the general fund, but it also can receive non-general fund sources. And so, for example, if there are unspent Prop C funds, if there are Prop M funds, which is going into effect next year and projected to bring in 20 million in its first year, 30 million in its second year, and can fund rental subsidies, this fund can pull from those sources instead of impacting the general fund. And that is our intention in bad budget years.
Got it. Thank you for that. We have about a minute left if anyone has any other questions. Otherwise, what I might offer, much like we have done with some of the other speakers, Ms. Heisler, if you have anything you didn't touch upon that you think would be relevant. I know that first 2 minutes goes by incredibly fast.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say we're incredibly proud of how broad the support is for this measure. It is also, I think, a smart and responsible and cost-effective strategy to prevent seniors and families who are currently housed from becoming homeless. It's far more expensive for the city to respond once folks are in shelters or on the street and provide medical care or other services. And so there's potential for a long-term positive impact on the city. And we really want to take care of the folks who've spent, their lives here.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heisler.
Thanks.
Okay, we are now on to ballot measure H. And for that, we have the speaker is Mr. Floyd Rollins. Is he in the chat?
Yep, adding him up now. And then I need to reset the clock here.
Okay.
Yep.
Welcome, Mr. Floyd Rollins. We are here to speak about Prop H. Excuse me. Retirement benefits for firefighters. And a yes vote means you want to amend the charter to change how pension benefits are calculated for members of the fire department hired on or after January 7th, 2012, by lowering the age these members can receive the highest pension from 58 to 55 and make those benefits the same as members hired before January 7th, 2012. If you vote no, you do not want to make these changes. And with that, Mr. Rollins, we welcome you to speak on this. You have 7 minutes, 2 minutes for an intro, 5 minutes Q&A.
All right, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good morning. Thank you all for having me this morning. My name is Floyd Rollins, and I am the president of the San Francisco Firefighters Local 798. I am also a firefighter here in San Francisco. As you stated at the outset, in 2012, we made some changes to our pension benefits. And when we made those changes, there were things that we did to help the pension system, such as assessing ourselves a sliding scale of our pension contributions to make sure that we keep the pension system whole. Another piece of the reform that we did was raising the retirement age from 55 to 58. What we've discovered in the time frame since 2012, as a result of studies that were not available when we made these changes, is that cancer is actually the leading cause of occupational death amongst firefighters. And just for statistics that we have, over 300 San Francisco firefighters have died from occupational cancer since 2006. Since 2018, 63 active and 142 firefighters have been diagnosed with occupational cancer. And the majority of those diagnoses have occurred in firefighters that are over 50, when the body is at a point when it's not able to fight off the carcinogens and the attacks that come operating in hazardous environments. In 2012, the Women's Firefighter Biomonitoring Collaborative reported that female San Francisco firefighters were contracting breast cancer 6 times the rate of the general population. According to the National Institute of Occupational Health, that firefighters have an elevated risk of contracting at least 11 different kinds of cancers. And so this is just reform that we feel that is important for the health and wellness, and is also for the fairness of firefighters here in San Francisco. So as I said, this is sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Your time's up, but please finish your sentence.
No, I was just going to say, and just last year, the International Agency of Cancer Research, which is a branch of the World Health Organization, designated firefighting as a group 1 carcinogen, which is the highest level of carcinogens that they rate in the world.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rollins. So I'll ask the first question, and then just a reminder to members, if you have questions, please write stack in the side. I appreciate the sacrifice and service of our firefighters. The controller notes that the annual cost of the program would be $3.7 million the first year and increase thereafter through year 16, in addition to the cost of hiring more firefighters due to early retirement. Are you aware, are there additional revenue sources that have been identified to offset this cost if this measure is adopted?
In the controller's report, I don't believe that they are, but there are. But one thing the legislative analyst brought forward is that to date, the current cost of payouts for firefighters who have had to retire early because of cancer diagnosis has been in the neighborhood of $12.3 million. So we're hoping that by reducing the retirement age, that will help bring that cost down. And additionally, it goes into the quality of life, because firefighters who are diagnosed with cancer will continue to have to rely on health benefits in retirement to address the issues.
Thank you. I will pause for a moment in case there are other questions.
It looks like Member Coles has a question.
Yeah, hi, good morning. First, I want to thank you for your service, as well as all the other firefighters in San Francisco, putting yourselves in, the line of duty that is so dangerous, is something that I'm immensely grateful for. My question is about benchmarking. The increased risk of cancer that the firefighters in San Francisco are experiencing, I'm imagining that other municipalities also experience. What data, if any, do you have to show benchmarking on retirement ages for other communities?
Well, there is data in a 6-city study that has been done across the United States by NIOSH that shows occurrences of cancer in other municipalities, cities like Philadelphia, Boston. And we certainly have that data available to show where the ages of diagnosis, as I said before, when at the age of 50, when your body is less able to fight off carcinogens or attacks that come onto the system, is that NIOSH and the World Health Organization have looked at all of that data and compiled it in studies that I can certainly send over to show where It's a national thing that's happening.
I guess my question is, have those other cities lowered the retirement age as a result of the increased risk of cancer after 50?
A lot of those cities' retirement systems are very different than ours. So I would have to check to see exactly what the provisions in their retirement systems are to find that out.
Great. Mr. Grimes, did you have a question?
Yes, mine's kind of quick. Floyd, I want to say thank you very much for your service. It's really heartfelt and kind of scary to hear the dangers you guys face, not only in fighting fires, but to recover from a fire fully. So what I'm gathering here, what you're asking for is to basically change the retirement age down because of health risks. Is that correct?
It's health risks, but if I can also add, it's an issue of fairness because firefighters that were hired before 2012 are currently able to retire at 55. The firefighters, which is almost 1,000 that were hired after 2012, have to work 3 more years to the age of 58.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Rollins. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
All right, members, your next interview slot for now is Proposition I, retirement benefits for nurses and 911 operators, the proponent side. Let me go ahead and move Mr. Rollins back into the attendee box. Thank you for joining us. And the proponent for Proposition I is Supervisor Safai. So let me check and see if Asha is in the room yet.
Great. And while you're doing that, Member Ho and I will be switching off. I will be kicking off and starting reading the ballot measure, and Member Ho will kick off with the first question.
So I don't see Asha here yet, just an FYI, but I do see the person I've been communicating with, Judy Lee. But I will text them quickly and see where they're at. But go ahead and begin.
Okay, so Measure I, or ballot Measure I, retirement benefits for nurses and 911 operators. If you vote yes, you want to allow registered nurses who are members of the San Francisco Employees Retired System and meet certain requirements to purchase credit towards their total pension years of service for time previously worked as per diem nurses, and to allow 911 dispatchers, supervisors, and coordinators to increase their pension benefits by joining the SFERS Miscellaneous Safety Plan for time worked starting in January 2025. A no vote means you do not want to make these changes. Now, that was a bit of a mouthful. Do we have is it Supervisor Safai that's supposed to be?
Yes, the campaign manager just let me know that he's signing on now, so he's running a little behind, but should be here momentarily.
Okay.
Well, actually, on the schedule, it has 10:25, and it's not 10:25 yet.
While true, we did ask everyone to get here 10 minutes early, but that being said,
To be fair, he's not late yet.
we are moving ahead of schedule, which is a nice change of pace relative to where we normally are.
And that the prompt was a mouthful, so I am thankful for a little bit extra time to read that before the proponent arrived. Allows everyone to get up and grab some coffee. Still in the morning hours. And we do not have an opponent of Prop I, just to kind of forecast a little. There is no opponent for Prop I that will be appearing, and likewise not for Prop J or Prop K.
And here he is. Bringing Supervisor Safai into the panelist box. He is the proponent representative for Proposition I, retirement benefits for nurses and 911 operators.
Great. Welcome, Supervisor Safai.
Hey guys.
Hello. So we have gone over the prompt, so everyone's aware of what Prop I is, and you will have a total of 7 minutes. You'll see a timer on fallback screen, and we'll also provide reminders. There's a 2-minute opening and then a 5-minute Q&A session. So, and Dawn will have kind of prompts that show you how much time you have left in your 2 minutes, and then the total amount of time, the 5 minutes. So with that, Supervisor Safai, the floor is yours for the opening statement.
Hold on. Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. I don't need to go into how short-staffed our city is and emergency first responders, but I will tell you that this particular measure is designed to both retain and attract really good personnel in our nurses and our 911 call operators. We're down a couple hundred nurses. We're down 40 911 call operators. Call operators are working 15 to 18-hour shifts. They're being overworked and they're burning out. And our nurses oftentimes are stuck in the category of temporary nurses or contract nurses with not a lot of incentive to move from that category to a permanent nursing position. So this measure is designed to, one, allow temporary nurses that work for our city become a permanent employee for up to 1 year. When they've been there for 1 year, they can buy back up to 3 years of their time served as a temporary nurse. Nurses are the only category in our city that does not allow them to do that. And we want the city to move them from temporary to permanent. It costs our city at least 14% more to have temporary contract nurses. And on the 911 side, as I said, we're only answering our emergency calls 71% of the time. By state classification, they are emergency personnel. So this measure allows us to move them, 911 call operators, to miscellaneous emergency personnel, which will give them an added retirement benefit. And then it allows the nurses that have worked 1 year as a full-time nurse to buy back up to 3 years. We worked very diligently to keep this cost down. We didn't extend it back to 6 or 7 years. So the cost is very minimal to our city, and it will actually be saved in the long run from moving from temporary and overtime, which we pay a significant amount to. I see time's up. So what's the next phase after the introductory remarks? Questions, right?
Yes. Thank you for being here, Supervisor Safai. My question is, I'm just unfamiliar with this credit system. Would you be able to explain the purchase credit system for retirement?
Yeah. So for instance, I worked at the San Francisco Housing Authority, which is a state retirement system. When I came over, when I was a deputy director for community development for the city and county, I was allowed to buy back that time and say, I'm going to get some credit back to the city. In this situation, it would be at the cost of the employee. They would pay up to about $20,000 to $30,000 a year themselves. They would have to contribute into the system for their temporary time. So it's somewhere between $60,000 to $75,000, or $80,000 an employee to buy up to 3 years of service. The city would then match that, and then they would get credit. So if the way our system works is once you've worked 10 years in the system, former Supervisor Aliota will tell you, you're vested in our healthcare system and our pension system. So this is an incentive to get people in the nursing category that have been there 6, 7, 8 years as temporary nurses while we're short nurses in the city, while we're paying overtime and while we're paying a lot more to temporary and contract nurses. We pay about almost time and a half, it's time and a quarter for their service rather than the full-time employee. So we're going to incentivize them to become permanent. They have to buy back their time, and then they become a part of our system so that we're not understaffed. Same thing with the 911. The 911 operators are categorized right now as miscellaneous employees, which gives them a slightly lower retirement benefit. This allows them to move to miscellaneous emergency personnel because they're on the front lines dealing with it. And state law allows us to do that, but we have to do it through a charter amendment.
Thank you, Supervisor. We have a question from member Elliott O'Pure.
Hi, Supervisor Safai. Nice to see you this morning.
Good to see you.
You know, honestly, I'm just sort of curious. It's really interesting to me that we have so many temporary nurses. Are there other reasons? I'm honestly just kind of curious about this.
I think there's a lot of reasons. I think the system itself was looking for a way to not consistently have permanent employees. I actually think DPH was vested in this system. They're constantly coming to us. Just back in in January, December, I sit on the budget committee. The DPH came and said, here's $40 million that we had to hire permanent nurses. We want you to transfer that into overtime pay so that we can pay temporary and contract nurses. So we're paying exorbitant amounts. So the system itself hasn't been challenged. The other thing that we did is we allow, once you've gone through the system, once you've been fingerprinted, once you've gone through the entire system as a temporary employee, currently you have to go through the process all over again. So part of the reason why a lot of these folks stay temporary is it takes up to 9 months to get a permanent position. We've changed that in the current contract. If you're temporary, you can quickly transition to be a permanent employee. So this is all part of this package.
Does it have anything? I mean, how does that contrast with the private hospitals?
I think also there were some people that got used to working, some here, some in the private hospitals. I think they have more of a permanent system. Maybe they don't have to worry as much about some of the other added factors. So they might have a similar structure, but we've become overly reliant. And as you know, I said this, we have almost 200 plus empty full-time positions that we budget for, but we're not filling. That's just in the nursing category. We're 40. We only have 80 911 call operators. We're supposed to be at 120, and we're not answering those calls only 71% of the time. These folks are working overtime and they're burning out.
Yeah. Thank you.
And let me just say, I know I only have 4 seconds left, but this is widely popular. Every single member of the board supported this. The nurses and 911 call operators supported this. So this has very, very strong support across the board.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor, for coming. I believe we'll see you a little later.
Yeah, I guess I got to come back in an hour for Proposition N.
Thanks so much. And we
All
look
right.
forward to seeing you again.
All right. Thanks.
Bye. All right. Then the next one that we'll hear from is ballot measure K. And this one does not, this has a proponent.
No, you skipped one.
Sorry?
You skipped a J, funding for
I am so
serving
sorry.
children, youth, and families.
I am so sorry. So moving on to J, let me read the prompt while we get the proponent on board. Ballot measure J, funding program serving children, youth, and families. Voting yes means you want to amend the charter to create an Our Children, Our Families initiative to ensure that related funds are used effectively. Voting no means you do not want to make these changes. And apologies, Supervisor Melgar, for inadvertently skipping over this. Great to see you. And so you will have 2 minutes for an opening statement, and then we'll have 5 minutes of question and answer. Dawn will have the prompts that let you know when you have what time remaining. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for being here on this weekend. I am here to speak on behalf of Prop J, which sets forth a joint initiative between the city departments and the San Francisco Unified School District. This is led by the mayor and the superintendent of schools, and the goals, the purpose is to align and coordinate the services for all the dollars we spend on children, youth, and families, and also transitional age disconnected youth. So the initiative will review the funding. It will plan ahead, do strategic planning for what the outcomes are that we want to see, be it to reduce truancy or to get kids, engaged in sports, all of the things that we want to see as outcome for the kids, so that they are the same for the city and the school district. But most importantly, during tight budget years, that we don't double dip. Right now, we have several sources of funding between the Public Enrichment Education Fund, the Children's Baseline, the Student Success Fund. So we want to make sure that it's clear that you cannot substitute one for the other. And the most important part is that it has accountability. So if a department or the school district is not spending the money as intended, there is a process for redirecting those funds so that they are spent in the way the voters intended. So thank you so much. I hope to answer any questions, and I hope to have your support. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Supervisor. Can you give more specifics on what some of these, what we can pay for with this measure that isn't currently paid for?
Sure. So one of the things that it's mostly clarification and prevention of double dipping. So for example, right now we have the Children's Baseline, which voters passed years ago that required a certain amount from the general fund to be spent on kids. When we passed the Public Enrichment Education Fund, it was not clear that that could not be substituted. Also, the Student Success Fund, which we passed after the pandemic to help kids, recover from the pandemic through math tutoring and all those things. It also was not clear in the language that there could not be any substitution. So it is to prevent the sort of double dipping so that we can actually get those dollars to kid services. On the other hand, there has been 4 years at the school district budgeting of the Public Enrichment Education Fund, but then on the other end, after the money has been spent, no accounting to make sure that those dollars were spent in the way that we budgeted and intended. And the PEEF Citizen Advisory Committee for many years has complained about this and asked the school district to provide better accounting for those dollars. So this requires it. It gives them an on-ramp. It allows the school district and departments to plan together, to identify goals, to make that transparent and vetted through the parents' community, but it also requires them that once they spend it, they provide proper accounting for it. That's what we want, is the accounting and the transparency, and also for everyone to plan together, to be on the same page about the outcomes that we want to see for the kids.
Supervisor Melgar, I had a question. So we know the school district, for example, now has outcomes and guardrails put into place. So they've already identified these are the outcomes that we seek to achieve. Does this create another set of goals or outcomes that then they need to be answerable to, and how do those interconnect?
No, but it requires that they coordinate with the city. So there is in this legislation a 5-year on-ramp for that coordination and strategic planning to take place. So the school district and the city should not have different outcomes. They should have the same outcomes. And so this is a process so that the money that we're spending through the school district for the city is aligned with their outcomes and vice versa. It also requires a data sharing agreement between the school district and the city so that we can look at those outcomes. We can agree with them from the get-go, but also look at them and make sure that our dollars are working as intended.
Thank you. Supervisor, in the controller's report, it says that this might cost up to $35 million a year, or at a minimum of up to $35 million a year. Can you help explain that cost?
Yes. So what Mr. Wagner is saying is that we will no longer be able to substitute those funds. So right now, the way it is that we are required to spend a certain amount of money on kids through the children's baseline. The way that they were accounting for it after we passed the Student Success Fund is that they took that Student Success Fund money and just substituted it so that the general fund dollars were spent elsewhere. And that is not what the voters intended. The voters intended to have the Student Success Fund go on top of it so that we could provide extra tutoring, academic support, and services to kids. So that's what the controller's report says, is we will no longer be able to substitute. So it will cost us money because we have, the voters have passed dollars that are supposed to be dedicated to kids, and we will no longer be able to double dip.
Thank
Supervisor,
you.
so
No,
Supervisor Mugar, I'm curious, this seems like it would be something that would already exist or be put into place in terms of funding is given, there's some accountability. Is it that there was just nothing in place before, or is it just it had not been executed on?
It's that what we had in place wasn't functioning. So years ago, we passed something called our Children, Our Families, which was supposed to be this coordinating body. Mayor Ed Lee created it. The problem was that it was this commission that had like 40 members. It was too big, and they never got around to doing this work. So this, fixes it and creates the process.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Okay, thank you all very much. Happy Sunday. Bye.
Thank you, Supervisor. All right, I'm going to move her back down. All right. You all are now moving off of, there was a lot of charter amendments. We're now moving from charter amendments to the letters that cover ordinances. Your next guest in the slot is Supervisor Joel Engardio, who is here to speak as the proponent for Proposition K. I see him in the box. I will promote him up right now, and then I'll let you all take it from there.
Great. And while we're promoting Supervisor Engardio, I will read out, and I misspoke earlier, there's both a proponent and opponent to ballot measure K. So I will read it this once so everyone is aware. Ballot measure K, permanently closing the Upper Great Highway to private vehicles to establish a public open recreation space. Voting yes means you want the city to use the Upper Great Highway as public open recreation space, permanently closing to private motor vehicles 7 days a week with limited exceptions. If you vote no, you do not want the city to make these changes. Welcome, Supervisor Engardio. What we will do is we have a 2-minute opening statement followed by 5 minutes of question and answer. Dawn will provide the signs to let you know, and then there's also the 7-minute box that will show up in Bobak's screen as well. So with that, I will turn it over to you for your 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So I'm here to talk about transforming a section of the Great Highway into a permanent oceanside park, which I believe is good for the environment and actually great for local merchants and will bring a lot of joy to generations of San Franciscans. But first, let me just back up and talk about why we're here. We need to talk about the Great Highway in 3 sections, and we need to talk about what's already been decided, what's being proposed, and what's staying the same. So there's a section of the Great Highway that's literally falling into the ocean. That's everything south of Sloat near the zoo. It's already been decided that's closing. So the Great Highway has lost its greatest utility, which was a direct connection from the Richmond to Daly City. And so with that, that raises the question, what do we do with the section between Lincoln and Sloat that has no on and off ramps for cars, no access into the Sunset District? So that's what we're talking about today. And then we need to acknowledge that the section of the Great Highway that actually connects the Richmond and the Sunset District, Richmond to Lincoln, that's staying the same, open to cars 24/7 as it always has been and always will be. So now the idea is if we have to close the section at Slope, cars will make a forced left turn, have to go around, detour around the zoo and Lake Merced to get to Point South. So what if they turn left at Lincoln instead? We have Sunset Boulevard, 3 lanes of traffic in each direction. Will take people to the exact same spot. And that gives the opportunity for this oceanside park. And why is that a great opportunity? We have seen already demonstrated that on this the last few years, it's been used as a park on the weekends. It has become the 3rd most visited park in San Francisco. 10,000 people visit this weekend version already. And so there is a demand for this. And I think that we can create something that will really create a renaissance for the Sunset and San Francisco, something iconic we haven't been able to create in 100 years. Something along the lines of the Golden Gate Bridge. People will say, I need to get to this oceanside park. And there'll be a tremendous spillover effect. We have 2 train lines, 4 bus lines that directly connect to the coast. And so people will come and visit this and then boost the economy and the Sunset. And it's just great for the environment. It's great for
Thank you, Supervisor.
Time's up. All right. But anyway, yeah, so that's it in a nutshell. But happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Supervisor. My question is, it will cost some money to build this into the Great Highway Park as envisioned. Where will this money come from?
Well, actually, right now, the way it is as this promenade, it's already the 3rd most popular park. So in some regard, it's already a success. It's already free in the sense that if we did nothing and just kept it the way it is, it's still a popular park. Of course, we want to do more than nothing, but I'm just trying to point out that by closing it to cars, the controller reports that we'll actually save money on the sand removal and other infrastructure like the traffic lights that are rusting out that need to be replaced. So in the short term, we'll save money. And in the short term, we'll already have a space that's popular as a park. And then in the long term, we can all work together to plan on funding for all of the amazing things that we might want to see in this park. So Prop K is the first step. It just allows people to decide, what should we do with our precious coast, this section of the coast? And then if we decide we'd like it to be a park, then we can start this whole long public process of the how and how much to spend and what to make it into. But in the meantime, it's still going to be popular because we already know 10,000 people come there every weekend.
Thank you, Supervisor. We have a couple of questions in the queue. We have Kirk Grimes and then member J2. Go ahead.
Okay. My question is, well, first I need to clarify something. Your piece includes something or covering from Lincoln Boulevard to Slope Boulevard, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to close that off, how can we prevent traffic from being absorbed into the community that's due west of the highway?
Yes. So a lot of thought is going to traffic mitigation because like I live out here, me and my husband drive, we deal with the traffic. We don't want, all the bad effects of traffic, of course. So Sunset Boulevard is 3 lanes of traffic in each direction, parallel to the Great Highway. And it is there is capacity there. The traffic volume on Sunset Boulevard is down 30% from pre-pandemic highs. On Lincoln Way, there's a series of stop signs that cause a lot of stop and go. We're going to replace some of those stop signs with traffic signals for better traffic flow. So the point is, if you have better traffic flow on Lincoln and you can get yourself to Sunset Boulevard for Point South, that's going to be a preferred driving route than cutting through the neighborhoods where you're going to have a lot more stop and go because a lot of the residents, they want more pedestrian safety measures. So they want to make sure that traffic is not using as a thoroughfare. So we can do all of that. And regardless whether Prop K wins or loses, we're going to still legislate those traffic improvements because we need them on the west side. I think it's a smart thing to do.
So you have plans in place for the existing infrastructure so that the community there won't be absorbing that traffic.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor. Next question is.
Yeah, because the point is we have to plan for that no matter what, for whether Prop K passes or loses, because we know that everything south of Sloat has already been legislated to close. Board of Supervisors legislated that unanimously. So we still need to navigate and create new inland routes. So we're going to make those improvements regardless.
Thank you, Supervisor. We've got 1 minute left. Let's squeeze in a question from member 2.
Hi, Supervisor. Thank you so much for being here. So my question for you is, when you ran for office, you promised that you would not close the Great Highway and take community input into consideration. And I know this because I volunteered for your campaign. Why would you do this to your constituents and flip on your position?
I didn't flip. If you look at my campaign page from 2022, I actually talked about how the southern extension is destined to close, and this creates the opportunity for a permanent park between Lincoln and Sloat. Of course, the compromise 2 years ago was great and was working, but a lot of things have changed since then. The Board of Supervisors 9-2 voted to not allow Friday evening commute. There has been several lawsuits and appeals to kill the compromise, which failed. The Coastal Commission denied the appeal. So a lot of things have changed in the last 2 years, and this issue is not going away. We need to resolve it, and taking it to the ballot so everyone has a say is the most fair and democratic way to do it, because this coast belongs to everyone, belongs to all San Franciscans, not one driver, not one cyclist, belongs to everyone. And we need to decide what to do. And that's what this question is.
Thank you,
I would like to say that your lack of community input was extremely disappointing. And even though it's a
Number
citywide
two.
issue, it's really upsetting. Thank you.
All right. I think we still have another, we have the opponent, and then we'll have more time for questions then as well. Supervisor Engardio, thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to move him back to attendee. Next up, presenting on behalf of the opponents, the opposition to Proposition K, is Matt, again, I always keep screwing up his last name, Matt Bischetto, who is in the box right here. 1 sec. There he is.
All right, so having read the prompt, we can just jump right into this. I think everyone's aware. So good morning, Mr. Bischetto, how are you? Oh, we can't see you.
There he is.
There we go.
There we go. Hi, guys.
All right. So,
Good job.
the format is we'll have 2-minute opening, and Don will provide prompts, and then 5 minutes for question and answer. And you can see your total time in the San Francisco and Bob X Hollywood Square.
Great.
Go ahead.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to start my 2 minutes here, but I think it's just worth referencing this road to nowhere, the closure of the Great Highway Extension. Even if we close the Great Highway Extension, it doesn't mean that the Upper Great Highway stops as a very vital travel corridor for West Side residents. We could use the same traffic mitigation and traffic improving scenarios they're using on Lincoln and do those on Sloat, and it's just as functional as it is today. The Great Highway is an indispensable travel corridor for West Side residents, with up to 20,000 cars traveling on it per day when it's open. And most importantly, it's used by some of our most cherished populations on the West Side: working class families, veterans, small business owners, the elderly, those with accessibility needs. And this is a status quo. It's a compromise that enjoys a consensus. So, if you want some want the UGH fully closed, some want it fully open, this compromise provides for both. You can use it as a park on the weekends, and you can travel on it when it's, most important to travel on the most busy commuting times. And, furthermore, neighbors love it. So when asking why we should or shouldn't do this, I think it's key to look at those who will be most affected and whether they really want it. Removing all the cars from UGH is not a compromise. It's a zero-sum scenario. As the supervisor pointed out before, there is no concrete plan after. There has to be a plan after. The only thing concrete in this is that it'll close it all to cars. So whatever we do, there has to be a community process up front that accounts for the increasing traffic elsewhere, the collateral damages that neighbors are worried about. So again, this bill is not a plan. It's just the only thing concrete is that it will close the cars. And I think, that's done on purpose, mostly because a park's going to cost the city a lot of money. At a time where we're facing $800 million deficit, this is not what we need to be spending money on. We need more money for public safety. We need more money to focus on housing. So no matter how you look at it, it's not good for the West Side, and it's not good for San Francisco. And in fact, this is dividing people on a topic where we really can be visionary about it and do find a long-term scenario that works for the whole West Side.
Thank you, Mr. Bischetto. Since both you and Supervisor Engardio brought up the cost and economics of this, can you speak to how this can save money or not save money?
Yeah, they say that, we won't have to upkeep the park, right? Like we're going to save a ton of money on upkeep because it won't be a road, but it still will be a road. Every park in San Francisco requires emergency access for emergency vehicles and city vehicles. So we're still going to have to upkeep it to that level to provide access. I mean, there will be emergencies. We will need cars up there, and it will need to be cleared. So the only thing is banning it to private cars, and it's still going to require level of upkeep. The sand will not go anywhere. If we didn't upkeep it, I liked how Supervisor Engardio mentioned it's $0 to just keep it as it is, and that's what they'll probably do. Like it'll be enjoyed that way. Well, I mean, that shows that there is no plan, right? I mean, and if we didn't do any maintenance, all that sand would blow to the lower grade highway. So, I mean, the sand's not going to disappear. There will be a maintenance cost. There still will be a cost associated to it. And I just think it's not really fair to say that there wouldn't be.
Thank you. We have a question from member 2 and then a question from Hasib Rahman. Go ahead, member 2.
Hi, Matt. I was wondering what your thoughts were on the compromise and why.
Yeah, I mean, the compromise works. I mean, look, like we should be going for solutions that bring the community together, not dividing them, right? And everybody's happy with the compromise. That means if we go forward and re-envision what's going on, there is a geological situation that, first of all, we really don't know what's going on there. I think an environmental report that actually shows why the erosion's moving north and how it's going to affect it over time is very important. And then we have a robust community process to say, look, how do we address this problem? And really come together as San Franciscans. Envision something like that Joel said, we'll create a renaissance. Right now, we've just created a war. So I think, the West Side's a very community-driven part of the city. And for something this big and this important for West Siders, I think it should have a community process. And I'm happy it's on the ballot so we could beat it as it is and have a community process. But I think this should be legislated in a better way than what we've done.
Thank you. And next question from Mr. Emron.
Thank you, Member Ho. Matt, can you speak a little bit about the business community's stance here as in regard to merchants, the foot traffic they depend on, the parking, the delivery services, and even commercial trucks coming in and out, and just their feelings about the Great Highway closure or staying open?
Yes, thank you. Merchants are overwhelmingly opposed to this, whether it's people at Parkside, Geary merchants, West Portal merchants. There's an overwhelming opposition to what's going on. And exactly for a lot of the things you realize. I mean, small businesses depend on that for access. I mean, a lot of small business owners are really, middle-class families just trying to survive. They might live in the Sunset, have their business in the Richmond or vice versa. And so, their ability to travel and move around so they can keep their business up is very important. And furthermore, like you said, commercial vehicles, whatever, just logistically getting things to their business, to and from, it's just going to make it much more difficult. So I think, small businesses are suffering across the city, and we can't be doing things that are going to push our Main Street mom and pop businesses out. We have to be trying to do things. I'm not saying move forward and have a vision, have better transit, have better, bike paths, more open space, but we can't do so at the cost of other communities that have just as much stake in the city as bicyclers and those who enjoy open space.
So, Mr. Bischetto, I guess my question is as a West Side resident myself, are you disputing that the Great Highway, that the upper part of it or the lower part of it is facing climate change and we need to develop a plan? I guess I'm a little confused because it's
go ahead. Yeah, there is a erosion issue happening there, but this has, what they're planning will do nothing to mitigate it. It's just shutting it off to cars. I mean, so if we're going to do something, if we're going to talk about erosion, I mean, we need a long-term scenario, and that's going to be billions of dollars to really do something long-term. So, I mean, if we want to have a good faith conversation about the environmental situation, the geological situation, I think it starts with an environmental report that shows us really what's happening.
I think we are at time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bischetto. Appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you.
All right, moving him back down into attendee. Up next, you have Proposition L, an additional business tax on transportation network companies and autonomous vehicle businesses for public transit. The proponents are up first, and the proponent point person is Leanne Chang, who is right here promoting the panelist. And I need to
Great.
set my timer.
So while you are while we're getting set up, just as a reminder to everyone, ballot measure L, additional business tax on transportation network companies and autonomous vehicle businesses to fund public transportation. A yes vote means you want to create a new gross receipts tax on transportation network companies and autonomous vehicle businesses that provide passenger service to compensation and use the funds to the city collects from the tax to support community transportation services and fare discount programs. A no vote means you do not want to make these changes. With that, welcome, Ms. Chang. You will have 2 minutes to have your opening statement, and then 5 minutes for Q&A. You will see prompts from Dawn and your total time where Bobak's corner is. With that,
Thank you.
Go ahead and start your 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. So yeah, I'm Leanne Chang. I'm a proponent of Prop L, and I'm here with proponents Chris Arvin and Kat Siegel and our campaign manager, Cyrus Hall. We're here because Muni might have to cut up to 20% of service as one-time federal funds run out. This means worse service and likely whole lines eliminated as early as next year. This will leave many transit-dependent riders stranded, while others will be nudged to drive or use ride-hail, so we'll have more traffic and more competition for parking. That's bad for business, bad for the 1,000 city jobs that may be lost, and bad for San Franciscans. Prop L will raise about $25 million a year through a gross receipts tax on ride-hail companies. There is no apportionment to payroll. The money can fund Muni and paratransit service, free Muni for youth, and discounts for seniors and people with disabilities or low incomes. It cannot fund capital projects such as infrastructure. The money is enough to protect up to a dozen bus lines from being cut outright. Today, San Francisco has a lower tax rate on ride-hails than any other major US city that taxes ride-hails. And if the companies choose to pass the full cost of Prop L onto riders, the full rate, including Prop D, would be 78 cents for a $10 ride. Whereas DC is at 85 cents, downtown Chicago is at $3, and Manhattan is at $3.24. So over 4 times what San Francisco's rate will be if Prop L passes. And ride-hail still operates in all of these cities. So we see Prop L as helping to right-size San Francisco's rate. A note about business tax reform. So Prop M has a conflict clause such that our measure will have to get more votes than it in order to take effect. The reverse is not true. Prop L cannot prevent Prop M from taking effect. And so with Muni ridership continuing to recover and surveys showing satisfaction higher than ever, and surveys also showing that San Franciscans want investment in transit frequency and reliability more than any other transportation investment. With your support, we are confident that we can win with a positive pro-Muni campaign. Glad to take your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Chang. You mentioned the percentage of taxes, but you didn't actually mention other fees like booking fees, California driver benefits. I'm actually literally looking at my Uber receipt right now, and city taxes. So I just want to give you an example, and maybe you can shed some light as to what proportion of taxes would be added on to these ride-hailing services. So I took an Uber to the airport. It was $41.04, and the subtotal of the ride was $25, and everything else was a surcharge or a tax. Can you speak to what you anticipate in seeing the actual impact comprehensively to users of ride-hail services?
Yeah, great question. There's that anecdote, that saying about the inevitabilities of life, including tax and death, right? So we don't see this tax as a punitive level. The example that I gave about comparing different cities' levels of tax, it only includes city level taxes. So it does, and specifically to ride-hail. So you're right, it doesn't include, the payroll tax they're paying, other gross receipts tax they're paying. It doesn't include state or federal or any, other taxes, right? But the general point there was that there's a lot of room to grow that that a higher rate of tax can, like a much higher rate of tax in terms of a city level tax can take effect without like having these businesses not be able to operate in our city.
Okay, thank you. We have
Yeah, maybe if I could add also, like we see that like in terms of the affordability of ride hail on the rider's perspective, it costs $2.50 to ride Muni across town, whereas easily 10x that for rideability. And so we see the real affordability crisis is not so much like an extra $1 of tax on that $25 ride, but if Prop L doesn't pass and we have deeper service cuts, meaning that Muni service isn't available, it's slower, riders get stranded, riders can't afford to use alternatives. And they're pushed to either use alternatives that they can't afford or they can't get where they're going because Muni is canceling lines and degrading service.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from member Mahmood.
Hi, Leanne. You mentioned how that the revenue generated from this will be in the tens of millions. Can you share a little bit more about the benefits, kind of where that money can be funded? Because my understanding is like you could be nearly doubling the budget for several equity programs, like Free Media for Youth. So while it's in the tens of millions, sounds like it could significantly help a large programs that need more funding. So can you tell me a little bit more about the benefits?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So the money can fund two main buckets. The first being bus, train, and paratransit service. So like actually running Muni service itself. And the lion's share of that money is for operators and mechanics and the other staff salaries that go to provide that service and keep it running. And then the other large bucket of things that Prop L can fund are the fare equity program. So Free Muni for Youth and discounts for seniors, folks with disabilities, people with low incomes. The total amount of cost for Free Muni for Youth is about is I don't have the number on me, but it's similar in size to the amount of money that our measure would bring in. So our measure doesn't distinguish what doesn't determine SFMP's choices within those two broad buckets, but certainly the agency can use it to protect service, to help people continue to get where they're going, as well as to fund the equity programs. And Free Muni for Youth is $5 million a year. So if there was a collapse of funding for that, our measure could cover that and more.
Sounds like doubling that program would be really good. So thank you.
So Ms. Chang, I know we only have a few seconds left, but can you say anything as to how this would coordinate with a potential 2026 transit measure?
Yeah, absolutely. So our measure fills a small amount of the total budget gap for the SFMTA, right? It doesn't answer the whole entire problem, and we don't think it has to in order to be a necessary part of the path to stabilization. So I see that my time is up there, but I guess I will just say that we are an example of the self-help that other counties are asking for in the regional negotiations, and that we believe that is one of the reasons why Senator Wiener was one of our early endorsers.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Chang. Appreciate your time. All right, and I think we have the opponents that will then tee up.
That is correct.
So again, this is one of the measures that has both proponent and opponent for people to consider both sides.
Yep, I got him. His name is Seth Smith. I've communicated with the campaign manager, and they told me this particular individual is the opponent for Proposition L, and he is now here in the panelist box. So without further ado, Mr. Smith.
So thank you, Mr. Smith. Welcome, and you will have 2 minutes for an opening statement and 5 minutes for question and answer. And so we will start your 2 minutes now.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I appreciate you affording me the opportunity to speak with you about Prop L. My name is Seth Smith, and I'm a member of the policy team at Uber based at our Mission Bay offices in San Francisco. I'm here today to oppose Prop L. Proposition L makes San Francisco more expensive without solving Muni's problems. We need a real plan to save Muni with funding and accountability. Muni is $214 or so million in debt because of plunging ridership, unreliable service, mismanagement, and lack of accountability. San Franciscans deserve a well-funded, fully functioning public transportation system that meets the needs of all residents. And this tax only raises a tiny fraction of the funding that Muni actually needs. Even if it's approved, voters will still face another costly tax increase for Muni in the next election. We must send a message that the city needs to fix Muni with real funding and real reform. And I believe Proposition L lacks some of the standard accountability measures that would be common, that we're seeing more commonplace in tax measures today. Taxpayer-funded measures usually have audits and citizen oversight to ensure funds are used effectively. Proposition L lacks these protections. The money can't even be used for road repair, fixing potholes, or bike and pedestrian safety improvements. Prop L will make it harder and more expensive to live in San Francisco. We need costs to go down, not up. Adding this tax increases the cost of living, making a bad problem even worse. And Proposition L hurts vulnerable San Franciscans. Many residents live in areas underserved by Muni and work non-traditional hours. Seniors and disabled residents often can't walk from transit stops to their homes, making ride shares more expensive. In this case, we'll punish these vulnerable groups, but not big corporations. Over the years, voters have passed numerous ballot measures that have increased taxes and created a volatile and complex business environment in San Francisco. The next proposition you're going to hear, Prop M, is looking to simplify some of that with an eye towards incentivizing businesses to stay and new businesses to be formed or to come to San Francisco, and adding piecemeal or patchwork propositions or measures to backstop and not even fully funding shortages is not the way to go about it, we think. Proposition L may be well-intentioned, but it's extremely flawed. It wastes money without fixing the real issues, and it hurts those who can least afford it. And it doesn't hold SFMTA accountable. So
Thank you,
because of
Mr.
those
Smith.
reasons, we're asking you to vote no on Prop L. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Do we have any questions for members?
Mr. Emron had a question.
Yes, thank you. I did have a quick question for you, Mr. Smith. This is a tax on ride-sharing companies, but the way you're framing it is passed down onto the consumer. Why is that?
Costs would be, prices have to be adjusted as new taxes are put in place. And I don't know that the entirety of the tax would be passed through the consumers, but some portion of it is going to be reflected in the price of the ride.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question from Mr. Mahmood and then a question from Member Coles.
Hi, Seth. So you alluded to multiple times that this is going to have a negative impact on housing, but some of the leading state legislators on housing, Senator Scott Wiener, pro-housing organizations, they're supporting Prop L. Do you claim to know more than Senator Scott Wiener and these pro-housing organizations on the impact of this legislation on our housing? If they are supporting it, I believe that they feel it's not going to negatively impact our housing crisis.
Mr. Mahmood, I didn't mention housing at all. I'm not sure where you're getting that from, but thank you for your question.
You mentioned it a couple of times, saying that this will affect the inability for people to live our housing crisis.
Did not say those words ever, sir.
Thank you. We'll move on to the question from Member Coles.
Yeah. Hi, Seth. So the proponents compared city taxes for San Francisco to New York, Chicago, and other cities. And the numbers suggested that this tax would be significantly lower. However, then we heard from Member Ho that the total fees total something like $15 for a ride to the airport for $45. I'm curious about the total fees for a consumer and how those stack up from San Francisco to other cities.
Thank you very much. That's a great question. So here in California, at the state level, additional fees are included on every Uber trip for a number of reasons. One reason is Proposition 22 and ensuring minimum wage guarantees for drivers on the platform. And so there's a fee associated with that on every trip. throughout California. Also throughout California, there's what's called an access for all fee. This is part of the access for all law at the state level, which requires that transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft provide wheelchair accessible vehicle services on the platform. So that's an additional 10-cent fee on every trip. And then the taxes are added on top of that. There are also new fees coming from the state this year with regard to assisting drivers with transitioning to zero emission vehicles. And then we have the existing tax in San Francisco on TNCs, which I believe is 3.5% for general rides and 1.5% for shared rides and EV rides in the city, with that apportionment for shared rides and EV rides being set to expire at the end of this year, which will be bringing our tax liabilities in San Francisco up regardless of any measure on the 2024 ballot. So our taxes in San Francisco are already looking to increase in 2025 on the backs of the zero emission vehicle transition that we in the state are attempting to achieve over by the end of the decade, making things harder on that side anyway. And then adding new taxes onto it, we see that as being detrimental.
So for like a 1 mile ride in San Francisco before this this tax is enacted, how much does it cost in San Francisco versus a 1 mile ride in New York City?
I don't have the exact numbers, but New York City is considerably more expensive because it has additional fees associated with congestion pricing and others. New York City is considerably more expensive. This tax, were it to be added on, would take San Francisco from the range it's at now to being one of the more expensive cities when it comes to tax liability in the country.
Thank you.
Great. Mr. Smith, I think we're about a few seconds left. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming. And
thank you for having me.
Thanks. All right. Moving right along to next one.
You now have Proposition M, and the proponent is named is Daniel Herstein, and I see him right where he needs to be, so I will promote him up to be a panelist.
Great. So ballot measure M, changes to business taxes. If you vote yes, you want to change the following taxes the city collects from businesses: the gross receipts tax, the homeless gross receipts tax, the overpaid executive gross receipts tax, the administrative office tax, and business registration fees. If you vote no, you do not want to change the city's business taxes. Welcome, Mr. Herstein. You will have 2 minutes for an opening statement and then 5 minutes for Q&A. You will see your overall time where fallback is, and then Don will hold up prompts to let you know how much time you have left over. So with that, I will let you start your 2-minute opening. Thank you.
Good morning, members of the committee. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Daniel Hertzstein. I'm the Director of Public Policy at the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce. We have about 1,000 members at the Chamber. 2/3 of those are small businesses. And as you may know, this was placed on the ballot by the voters of San Francisco via signature with 2 main proponents, who are Lori Thomas, who's the head of the Golden Gate Restaurant Association, and Masood Samari, the head of the Council of District Merchants. I should also mention that Kristen Evans from the Booksmith has been incredibly impactful on this measure as well. This measure will do a couple of really, really vital things for small businesses in San Francisco. The first is that it will exempt an additional 2,700 small businesses from paying gross receipts taxes. The second is that it eliminates about $10 million in fees across the board from those same small businesses, and it reduces the tax liability on restaurants in San Francisco for 90% of restaurants. It completely eliminates or reduces taxes on 90% of restaurants. It also reduces taxes on about 50% of retailers. Finally, it also lowers taxes on core groups that impact San Francisco's economy that have been struggling during the pandemic. That includes hotels, arts and culture, and other really, really important items that impact us in the pandemic. I want to also share 2 other pieces. One, right now our current tax structure incentivizes companies to leave their employees working from home. We are heavily on the payroll side. This would switch to the sales side, which would no longer penalize companies who choose to bring employees back to the office. And then finally, it does a number of pieces to simplify our tax code, moving from 14 categories to 7 categories, as well as a number of other simplification items. This measure was created through a process with the city. It took well over a year. It started in October of 2022 when Supervisor Mandelman requested a report, and include over 12 months of public meetings with Mayor Breed, President Peskin, the controller, the treasurer, tax collector, the city economist, and it ended up being a really, really great compromise. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. We have 2 questions, one from Member Coles and one from Member Alioto-Pierre. Member Coles, please go ahead.
Oh, sorry, that's a mistake.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry, my mistake. That was your question from the prior prop. Okay, Member Alioto-Pierre, please go ahead.
Thank you, Member Ho. Hi, Mr. Herdstein. Nice to see you. It's really great to hear that you're working on something, that you're bringing something to the voters that will help small businesses, our restaurants in particular, because they are such a vital part of San Francisco and our character and who we are. I'm curious to know, and they've been really hit, and a number of different things that I won't start to get into. But when we're looking at the money, what are we looking at? So these are a lot of tax, we're going back. And I'm just kind of curious, are we leaving a deficit? Are we leaving a hole? Can you just tell us a little bit about that? Not to say that bringing more business in and bringing more employees in won't help fill things out, but I am curious about the money aspect of this.
The short answer is no. So it's a little complicated. But in the short term, there is a revenue negative element to this tax. The vast majority of that is going to be made up via legal liabilities. The city currently has about $400 million in reserves for lawsuit liabilities related to our taxes. With these changes, the city anticipates a number of those going away. So that opens up some of those dollars. Long term, 3 years down the line, there are tax increases. And so long term, hopefully once our economy has stabilized a little bit more, you're going to see some modest increases down the line in 3 and 4 years. So long term, it's actually revenue positive. Short term, it is revenue negative on businesses, but not necessarily on the underlying city budget.
Okay, so there's a lot of this because we're still kind of coming out of COVID. I mean, is that really what this is directed towards?
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple of major pieces. One is wanting to help small businesses and other impacted industries as we recover from COVID. The second is, as I mentioned, not having this incentive to leave employees at home. So as we think about recovering, like we want companies to bring folks back to the office. And that's a really big one. And then the third one, which I didn't mention, is that San Francisco has a really serious risk of tax loss if big companies leave San Francisco. And so as you may have heard, there are 5 companies that pay 24% of our business taxes. There are 10 companies that pay 33%. Those companies are making decisions about whether they want to shut down office space in San Francisco or whether they want to shut it down in Silicon Valley. They maybe don't need all of it. And so we really need to shift the incentive there as well. That's why there's such a broad coalition of support.
Okay, and I'm sorry, one more follow-up. Has there been any thought put into open storefronts in our neighborhood commercial districts? I mean, is there any ability that this might have and help shore up our neighborhood?
Yeah, I mean, at its most basic level, like it impacts those areas through lowering taxes on the small businesses, but not directly.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank
We have a question from Chair Tung. Chair Tung, please go ahead.
Thank you, Member Ho. Hello, Daniel. Thank you for the work that you're doing with the Chamber of Commerce. My question, it relates back to the prior measure and how the interaction between the two, M and L. And could you explain how that works? Because I didn't quite grasp it all.
Thank you, Chair Tung. I appreciate that question. It's a really good one. So there is a clause in Prop M that basically says if it passes with the most votes, it overrides any other measure that relates to gross receipts taxes that are on the ballot this year. That was not language that was proposed specifically by the proponents of this measure, it was actually language that was proposed as part of the city's year-plus process. So again, the city controller, Ben Rosenfield, and then Greg Wagner, Ted Egan, the city economist, the treasurer tax collector, Jose Cisneros, went through a 12-month process, a public process with hundreds of meetings. There's a public website with all the project materials. And that process ended with proposed language from the city, which the ballot proponents took most of and put into a measure. So that measure is that language was really to protect the work the city had done over the course of well over a year. And so that's why you see it there. And so just to sort of untangle that, it was in fact not a political piece that was added. It was added by our city representatives who felt like it was really, really important for stability in order to ensure the values of the proposition move forward.
So I guess what I'm hearing from you is that this was a very thoughtful, comprehensive, long-term process which engaged stakeholders to come up with a comprehensive plan, as you say, instead of something that was more piecemeal and more just did not engage stakeholders in the process.
That's precisely right. I know I'm out of time, but I'll just share. It started in October of 2022. There were public meetings regularly over the course of the last 18 months. There was feedback from hundreds of businesses, community groups, neighbors. It included Mayor Breed at the table, President Peskin at the table, labor at the table, small businesses, big businesses, you name them. Long process, and that's how we ended here. And that's why you see it.
Thank
I
you
appreciate
so much.
the answer very much. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for coming. We're going to move on so that we are almost at the end of our total time together. We have a couple more ballot measures to get through. So the next is ballot measure N, First Responder Student Loan and Training Reimbursement Fund. I will continue to read the prompt while Beck works on, I assume, getting Supervisor Safai back. Is that correct?
He's back. I'm promoting him now.
Great. Okay. So the prompt, this is the First Responder Student Loan and Training Reimbursement Fund. If you vote yes, you want to create a fund that the city could use to help reimburse eligible city employees, including police officers, firefighters, sheriffs, paramedics, registered nurses, and 911 dispatchers for student loans and education and training programs. If you vote no, you do not want to create this fund. Supervisor Safai, thank you for joining us again. You know the drill, 2 minutes opening and then 5 minutes of Q&A, and your time will start now.
Thank you, guys. I think we're all really clear how short-staffed we are when it comes to our first responders. There's been a lot of conversation about being down around 400 or 500 police officers. We're down, over 100 plus deputy sheriffs. Our jails are backed up. I talked earlier about our 911 call operators being 40 short out of 120. Talked about our nurses, our paramedics. So our entire public safety system is strained. And this is the first time in California history to be a police officer, you have to have a 4-year degree in any degree, or at least a 2-year specialization in criminal justice. And many of our first responders continue to get educational training, whether it's search and rescue, whether it's hazmat, or even just going through the process itself. I bumped into a young woman the other day that wants to be a deputy sheriff, and she was talking about just the cost of going through the process along with her training. So this idea is to create a student loan forgiveness fund. After you've worked for the city for up to 3 years, you would get the potential and or ongoing training, you get the potential for up to $25,000. This is not a new tax. This is not a budget set aside, but it is saying that the voters of San Francisco are saying that this is a priority. This is something that we need to do. It would work in complement with any federal or state programs once we work on implementation, but it would be saying the voters of San Francisco would say, for the upcoming year, the mayor and the board would need to prioritize this. And every year, the board has to submit a balanced budget, but they do have a significant amount of discretionary funds, and this would be a part of that they would put some money aside. If, for instance, we got up to 25 million, it would help potentially over 1,000 people. first responders. I see time's up.
Thank you, Supervisor. I think you might have flipped out there just for a second, but I was going to ask the question anyways. How many people do you think will be served by this?
Well, the goal would be to get it up to a 25 million. I also didn't mention that we created this in such a way that private philanthropy can also contribute into this fund. I'm sure you all are well aware that philanthropists gave over $1 million recently to the police department. So this would open up that opportunity to complement that. But if we got it up to 25 million, that's about 1,000 first responders that could be helped. And we could do it in a very accelerated fashion as we're recruiting. This is a wonderful recruitment tool. People know they come here in a competitive environment. They know coming to San Francisco, they would have the opportunity to get up to $25,000 in student loan forgiveness.
Thank you. Do we have any additional questions for members?
Yes, I have one.
Yeah, you have Kirk
Yes.
Grimes.
Hi, thank you. Sorry. Mr. Grimes, please go ahead.
Good morning, Supervisor Safai. Thank you for being here.
Hey.
I'm just curious, are these classes offered at City College, or are you saying in general you want anyone that's been going to school and is going to be working with City and County in San Francisco in any of these emergency capacities get student reimbursement?
Yeah, it would absolutely be anyone that goes to any educational training or any ongoing training once they become part of the city and county that are in these categories of first responders, nurses, paramedics, 911 call operators, deputy sheriffs, police, and firefighters.
So
and yes,
renewing, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So
Trying to
renewing
understand your question.
certifications would be one of the things that they would get reimbursed for?
Yeah, anything that's ongoing training or certifications, a lot of, as I said earlier, the paramedics, firefighters, deputy sheriffs, others, they have to go through specialized training once they become, and part of their MOU, part of their agreement with the city doesn't necessarily reimburse them for all the time off, the educational training, and the cost of going through the program itself. And this is listening for them on the front lines, listening to them firsthand, tell that part of their experience.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. We have a question from member Alioto Pierre. Please go ahead.
Supervisor Safai. So 25 million a year? I'm trying to get my head around.
No. We would like to get the pot up to 25 million. No, absolutely
Okay.
not. This program would be triggered once there's $1 million in this fund, but the goal would be up in the next 3 years to potentially have $25 million in this fund that people could draw down.
And it would be a joint raise it philanthropically, but also pull from the general fund.
Yes, from any of the discretionary funds. As you know, every year the mayor and the board come up with different priorities that go up to almost $100+ million a year. You could say in year one, the mayor and the board agree to put about 5 or 10 million. In year two, maybe 5 million. Maybe philanthropist comes in and contributes 10 million, and then here we are. We have 25 million that we can draw down. This does not have to be an ongoing program, but its intent is to see how successful it would be in recruiting and retaining first responders.
So by passing this particular thing right now, is there a direct tie to any resources, or would it have to go to the Board of Supervisors and it would be a part of the conversation while doing the budget, and this
Correct.
just allows for the ability to do it?
Correct. We did not want to do a set aside. We did not want to do a new tax. We wanted to create that opportunity.
Okay.
Thank you. We have a question from member Coles.
Yeah, I want to build on Mr. Grimes' question. For classes that are offered at City College that would go towards a 4-year degree, is there the ability to create some sort of incentive? So if you take these classes at City College, you get some kind of sweetener around the loan forgiveness?
Absolutely. I
If you
mean,
take 30
part of what
seconds
we
to answer this, go for it,
okay,
Supervisor.
thanks. Part of what we didn't do is we didn't put in kind of the administrative procedures yet. That would be something that we could do as part of the administrative procedures. We could say, if you take advantage of City College, particularly Free City, and then you go on to X, Y, and Z, we're going to give you a different prioritization. One of the other questions we got was, could we prioritize the less lucrative positions, 911, paramedic, as a way to kind of prioritize those that are not as don't have as high a salary. There's a lot of different things we can do as part of the administrative process.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Can I just end with 5 seconds on something? I just want to say this has broad support on the board. I'm very proud of the work that we did on that. It has, Matt Dorsey and Connie Chan as Shaman Walton, and Joel Ingardio, myself. It has all of the different first responders in support of this. And Sheriff Miyamoto. So
Great.
this
Thank
is
you,
a
Supervisor.
thank you guys. Have
Thanks
a
so
wonderful
much.
day. Maybe I'll come back in an hour to talk about something else. Just
Let you
kidding.
in, yeah.
I'm just joking. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
All
Okay.
right, we've made it to the last one. So this is O, and while we tee that up, I will read out ballot measure O, supporting reproductive rights. If you vote yes, you want city policy and law to support, protect, and expand reproductive rights and services. If you vote no, you do not want to make these changes. Who do we have teed up?
We are supposed to have Heidi Seek teed up, but I do not. Sorry, so fire engine passing my door. I do not yet see her in the attendees list. So I am. I texted her 5 minutes ago to just confirm, but I don't yet see her. So I am waiting, and I apologize to have you all wait as we are near the end of this marathon interview session.
Thank you to everyone for attending, for asking your questions. Let's begin the last one.
Just as a logistical reminder for everyone, the San Francisco Democratic County Central Committee will not be voting until their August meeting, which is on August 28th. So you have time to go talk to various folks, campaigns you want to follow up with, people you want to ask further questions of, go read those controllers reports. You have plenty of time to go do that. And you're all not going to be making a decision for 10 more days. Yeah.
I know there were a few there. We went through most of the questions when folks wrote stack, but I just encourage folks, if you didn't get a chance to have your question answered, please do seek out those proponents and opponents.
So we had this time scheduled for 11:29 to begin. So we are nearly 10 minutes past the start time.
Yeah, the only thing I could think that might have been a miscommunication, although I was pretty clear about this, is that it is in Pacific Standard Time. And I know that Heidi, who is part of helping with the Democratic National Convention, is in Chicago currently. So that might have been something. That's just speculation on my end. But I am trying.
Yeah, I think we're conscious of everyone's time, given that we are a bit over. I'd say if we don't hear back in the next minute or so, that we conclude and adjourn.
Thank you. I agree.
And here I was going for a perfect batting average.
You did well, Bobak. This is the
former executive director Garcia warned me about the difficulty of coordinating these calls, and so I tried very hard to work with you and the co-chairs of the endorsements committee to make sure that everything was lined up, queued up, and
Yes.
coordinated accordingly. And
Yes, at this time, I would like to thank you, Executive Director Babak Esfanardi, for doing such great work and keeping us on track and on schedule. And thank you so much, Don Jerusa, for volunteering with us to track time. Thank you.
Thank you both, and thank you to everyone for coming, attending, and we hope you found this informational, and look forward to seeing you all at the vote.
One sec, folks. The problem was time zone. Her calendar did not translate the invitation I sent to her local time. So I just sent her the Zoom link, and I'm encouraging her to join now. Probably something
So
I should.
let me just fill the time with some chair's remarks. So over the course of the last endorsement interviews and this one, I've seen the work of these two committees just be really, really fruitful in giving information to the public about these important local races and local measures. And I would like to extend my thanks to Vice Chair Carrie Barnes, Member Alioto Pierre, Member Gupta, and Member Ho, and the tremendous amount of work that they have put into this process, not only to make it as efficient as possible, but to get the broadest range of individuals and measures in front of the public as we possibly can. And I think this is really an important part of our mission as the Democratic Party, to deliver information to Democrats so they can vote accordingly. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chair Tung. And it looks like we have Heidi Secure.
Correct. Yes. My apologies for the miscommunication on my end around time zones, but Heidi, we're glad you can join us. I know you're joining us from Chicago. It looks like you're literally joining us from the DNC itself, so that's fitting.
I'm on the floor and I'm standing in the California section. You want to see how close we are? We're in the front row, folks. Like, look, there, let me see. This is California right behind me. And this is the podium.
Wow. Heidi, this is the most exciting part of this endorsement process. Thank you for showing.
I can't wait to see you all. It's so cool. Okay, anyway.
We're gonna have you switch gears temporarily.
I know. I will try. I'll do
O.
my best. I mean, if there's one thing, I'm so excited about being at the DNC and supporting Kamala, but I'm even more excited to be talking about reproductive freedom. So it's like a win-win-win-win-win for me.
So your 2 minutes, Ms. Seek, your 2 minutes will start now. We're going to keep this brief because I know we're a little over, and I'm sure you have many great things to do over there. So go ahead with your 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's fun. Okay. It is a great pleasure for me to request and ask for the endorsement of Proposition O, which is the San Francisco Reproductive Freedom Act. This act was developed through the lens of the fact that we have existential threats coming. And of course, it was certainly before Kamala was nominated, but we still have to remember that we live in a country where Roe v. Wade is overturned, and so many states are limiting access to comprehensive reproductive health care. So thinking about the fact that there is this existential threat, a disaster, so to speak, the way to think about this ballot initiative is that it is in fact a technical resilience initiative that addresses the threat coming at us. And so in 2015, the National Institute for Reproductive Health named San Francisco the #1 city for reproductive freedom based on a list of maybe 50 policy measures and perspectives that a city could do to protect reproductive freedom access. And San Francisco was #1, but we didn't have everything done. And so what this measure does, it establishes a policy, an overarching policy that says we are a city where everyone should be able to access comprehensive reproductive freedom. This is not just women, this is for everybody. We're talking about birth control, STD testing, hormones, hormone therapy, everything. And then when you look at the list of the things that the ballot initiative does, these are technical fixes to create more resilience, more strength against any kind of impending national abortion ban, the policies of Project 2025, and any kind of other existential threats to make sure that our city is safe. The way to think about it, it's like a legal ground to stand on in the face of an attack, which we are still under. I mean, say Kamala wins. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that's the case, but she doesn't get Congress. That means a lot of states are just hanging out there with so much suffering. And so we are I'm very honored to be able to represent this initiative, to be a part of it. And I just earnestly hope for your support and endorsement, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Seek. We have a question from Member Coles. Please go ahead.
Hi, Heidi. Thanks for joining us today. I'm very excited about this proposition, and I also appreciate the thoughtfulness of kind of having a carve out for providing blinded data for research. Also appreciate that we are attempting to protect people who access reproductive care and the providers of that care. My question for you is San Francisco a pioneer in passing this kind of legislation, or have other cities already done so? And if we are a pioneer, do you think there's opportunity for us to coordinate with other cities to pass similar legislation? And then the last thing I want to add is to let you know that we are working really hard, the DCCC in San Francisco, to flip congressional seats so that our future president, Kamala Harris, does have a blue Congress. Thank you.
Yes, please. So I absolutely love that question, because this is why we built this ballot initiative. As you know, I started Vote Pro Choice in 2015. That's really the San Francisco Women's Political Committee at scale, where we were looking at down ballot actions that we could take, particularly in state and local government, to be able to protect reproductive freedom. San Francisco is at the forefront of these issues. There's no one that touches us. Particularly with the Bay Area Abortion Rights Coalition, the work that we had done all the way before that, and with the ballot initiative. I will say that I did take something called the GRACE Act and incorporate it into this work. The GRACE Act is a piece of legislation that was passed by blue cities and red states to try to create some policy and protection in the cities, and it's like data sharing and it's budget allocations and that sort of thing. So there is some of that we borrowed, but by far one of my intentions is this ballot initiative will be shared across the country. And what's great is I plan on using a lot of the Vote Pro Choice network and elected officials that I've been working with for the past 8 years to be able to have a network where we can continue to pass it. I mean, and of course, and I hope that Kamala gets elected, we get Congress, we get Senate, we can have a national legislation that will help. But we can always look toward expansion, and that will be our commitment and mission until the day I die.
Thank you so much. We have another question from Member Aliota Pierre.
Hi,
And we have
Heidi.
2 minutes left.
Yes. Hi, Heidi. I really don't have a question. I just want to say thank you so much. This is great. Everything is really exciting. The initiative is fabulous. I look forward to voting for it. I look forward to helping you. And thanks for everything that you do. Go kill it over there at the DNC and bring our girl home.
Yes.
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 Yes. I keep bursting into tears. It's just horrible that I thought my heart was dead. I've been in politics since I was 7. I thought I had died inside, and it turns out it's all good.
And with that, I don't have a question either, but I'm flying out tonight, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Yay. I mean, this is what it feels like. There is joy here. We even printed out joy signs. So it's just the weirdest convention I've ever been to, but I'm drinking it in, and I can't wait to share it with all of you. And if you do have any questions, I'll make sure that Boback has the one pager, and the website has a link to the actual language. I'm really proud of it. I mean, this is actually also based on my previous experience I was the chief logistics officer for the city and the first resilience officer. So it's really based on that. There's a disaster, we got to do something about it. And it's a lot of that lesson also. So there's that perspective as well. And I'm just so grateful to the mayor and to the city and the Board of Supervisors and the DCCC members here who have been a part of this ballot initiative.
Thank you.
See you all soon. See you in Chicago.
This is the best way to end our endorsement interviews by having a view of the floor.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you all.
Thanks
Bye,
so
Heidi.
much.
I definitely did not plan that, but here we are. Okay, with that, members, all of the interviews that you worked with me to schedule have been completed. I know there might be other campaigns out there that maybe they're just now starting to form. They have 10 days if they want to reach out to you all and make their case. But as you all know, your vote will on all of these items will be coming up on August the 28th in that meeting, which I now have to go prepare the agenda for. I'll let you two close it out with any closing remarks, and then we can end this, and I will get the recording up on our social media.
Great. No, I think we already did. So thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you going over. Appreciate the questions. Have a great rest of your Sunday.
Thanks, you guys.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.